Meeting order. It's Monday, June 9th of 2025. This is the Stoughton Plan Commission meeting. We do have a quorum, and we are certified in compliance with open meetings law. So the first item of business would be approval of the minutes from the last meeting. I would entertain that motion.
Tillison motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Schumacher. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. Next item is City Council Representative Report. Do you have a report, Alderperson Caravello?
I can report that I have nothing to report. There was no planning action at the last council meeting.
Alrighty, we'll go on to citizen comments. I do not have anybody signed up, but if somebody here wishes to speak on an item that you're not going to be speaking to later, you can let me know now. Otherwise, we'll keep going. Seeing none, we'll go to item number 7, which is 401 South 5th Street. And we have a couple items on here. We have a rezone to planned development, and that would involve a public hearing and a recommendation to the City Council. Do you want to give us an overview before the public hearing?
So I was going to do this a little bit differently tonight since we have a lot of developers on. I was going to let the developers stand up and talk about their project, then we can close open for public hearing, and then we can go through the planner's recommendations. Okay. Are you guys okay with that? So I'll go ahead and turn the floor over to
When you come up, you just push the button, the red light will come on, and that tells you the microphone is live, and you can adjust the gooseneck any way you see fit, and you should be good to go.
All right. Yeah, thanks. My name is Brian Riggles. I might look familiar from a meeting in February, I guess, when I basically came before you to talk about the same exact thing. And I guess, it's a little bit of a chicken or the egg kind of thing. I had to make sure that you might see it as a possibility, like the use that I want to, transform that site, that building into something a little more residential than its traditional neighborhood business, zoning moniker. So yeah, I guess it's just kind of me formally before you, asking for the proverbial thumbs up to do that. I know you have a busy itinerary tonight, so I won't be too lengthy, but again, I just wanted, I was kind of seeing doing a longer term, semi-permanent resident in the basement unit of this building, kind of a 2-bedroom essentially. And then kind of a shorter term Airbnb type rental on the main floor and 1-bedroom upstairs. I'm sure you're all familiar with, to do that, we'd have to do a planned development because the lot is non-conforming. I think that's just what the building kind of wants to be. So maybe I'll just stop there and see what you guys are thinking at this point.
All right. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks.
Are there any initial questions for Brian, or would you like to hear from Chris next?
Okay, so essentially the developer is requesting a planned development. While planned developments allows flexibility to project design, the Plan Commission needs to establish standards to protect the public health and safety to ensure design quality and overall the plan. So initially when he came in, he was requesting neighborhood business to MR zoning district with a planned development. I am suggesting that it stay neighborhood business with the planned development over the top of it, partly because in neighborhood business, a 2-flat is permitted under conditional use. So that's why I'm going that direction for the request. And I can get into it a little bit more, but as everyone is aware, this lot is existing non-conforming and the building's existing non-conforming. So Essentially, what we would have to apply to the plan development is the lot size. And I'm just going to read through these, but you can see the minimum requirements. So he's going to need flexibility on the lot size because right now it's a hair over 4,000 square feet. Lot width is 66 feet. He needs the flexibility for that. Front of street, side lot, 11 feet. Rear lot is 6, no buffer required and no parking requirements. If the plan commission wishes to allow the conversion into a 2-flat with a commercial indoor, the department recommends the following zoning needs to stay as neighborhood business with the requested plan development for the flexibility over it. So my recommendations, like if this is the direction you guys want to go, staff recommends neighborhood business with a plan development for flexibilities for commercial indoor lodging and a reduction in the regulations of the 2-flat that are required per the neighborhood business. With the approval for the flexibilities from the minimum zoning standards, the city has the power to impose additional requirements on proposed plan developments. The plan development is taking the place of what would be a required conditional use permit. Staff recommends the following subject to approval. The flexibility on the lot size, number 1. Number 2, lot width, 66 feet. Number 3, front yard street, it needs the flexibility on. Number 4 is rear yard, needs the flexibility. Number 5 is no buffer requirement between the neighbors. The property shares, number 6 is no parking requirements. A minimal number of off-street parking spaces is required on the lot, including garage, driveways, all designated parking services. It's 2. The property does share a small portion of an existing asphalt driveway with the property to the south, but it is not wide enough to provide functional for both properties. The Plan Commission could require no parking or work with the standard parking requirements with some parking. And that's your guys' choice on that. Number 7 is requesting that the applicant use the design guidelines to make the building look more like the original. So if they start doing outside work, we need to make it look more historic. Number 8 is all modifications to the building are staying inside of the building footprint. An as-built may be required to verify the location of the building footprint. During the as-built requirements, the landscape surface ratio, they're not going to meet the landscape surface ratio. I mean, they're not making stuff outside the building, but when they do the as-built, I'm looking for documentation on what's going on with the landscaping outside. And I've recommended he do an as-built so he can see where his property lines are, quite frankly. Because we're requesting, for example, we're like, okay, a 6-foot reduced setback, like approving the 6-foot setback, but that's us drawing it off of Dane County, thinking it's 6 feet, where it might even be less than that. So I think that's important. This is a 2-flat. This dwelling unit type may not be split into additional residents. In the event that additional units are proposed, it will void this current plan development. Upon approval of the ordinance and the SIP may be submitted, considered for approval. So I don't think that he would require per ordinance an SIP unless he's doing work outside of the building and modifying it outside of the building. At this point, he is not. And then the other thing too is I don't have resolutions in here. I want to get directions from you and I'll build those resolutions to go to council from that.
All right, are there any questions from commissioners? So what I gather here, Director Muntz-Pritchard, is that the reason they're asking for some flexibility is really related to the current building and the lot that it's placed on? Is that?
Yeah, so he came to you guys before, and I have it included in the planner's report when you go down to the bottom. The problem with this lot is it's existing, non-conforming. It doesn't meet any setback requirements, nothing. It doesn't meet anything. It's a historic church that was, I think, turned into a VA at some point, and then the VA moved. You might know some of the history on this too. It was taken over most recently by a photographer studio, and then Brian subsequently bought the property and is trying to decide what to do with it. And he's asking for a 2-flat. I do have all the definitions, so it's a substandard lot regulation, non-conforming structure regulation.
So my follow-up would be is, we could approve it as submitted. If we don't, what other use could you have for the building?
Well, anything that's currently in neighborhood business would be, as long as it's a permitted use. If they go in and start changing stuff, then we have normally, off the top of my head, I can't think of, if they change it to this, it's going to require 12 parking spaces, this level of landscaping, this kind of stuff. But as it sits right now, as long as it's staying unmodified, it can continue the use that's like permitted uses in those districts. So the area is interesting. If you look at the zoning map, it's kind of up on the top. I think in the first part of the packet, you can see, so it's pink, and we've got just kind of a hodgepodge of stuff around it. So to the north is central, well, no, that's institutional. And then I think we've got TR6, and it's a bunch of different stuff. So, but we don't have any multifamily residential zoning currently in this particular little nook. So that's why, suggesting it keeping neighborhood business, which is a conditional use for a 2-flat neighborhood business, so.
Okay, and as part of the zoning requirement, we notify the neighbors?
Yes.
All right, I'm not sure if any are here, perhaps when we go into the public hearing, maybe if there's a neighbor here to speak to it, we'll hear from them. Any questions or comments from commissioners before we go into the public hearing? Hearing none.
Hey, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead. Hearing
If
one.
you can hear me. I think that I have a question, and I'm curious, I'm looking at what looks like the photograph that I think is taken from, looking at the building from the west. So I guess that's 5th Street side, that has the building that is next door to it from the south, that has the picture of the shared driveway. So that might be one down from what you're showing on your screen currently, if I'm
Right there.
not mistaken. There you go. And as far as, I really, just for a curiosity's sake, there's a little white, some sort of access or little structure of some sort that is attached to the side. I'm curious what that is.
That's simply egress. There's like 6 stairs coming up from the basement level to get out, sort of a helpful emergency exit to make it feasible to have multiple exits in case of an emergency. But yeah.
Okay.
Not to be used.
Looking at that as, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to finish off by saying not to be used as an entrance ever. Really, just kind of an exit. Yeah.
I was just curious because I was looking at that as, with the shared driveway kind of oddity of that shared driveway, if that was something that necessarily needed to be there, and if that could potentially add possibility of expanding the driveway there, since looks like there's some piece of sidewalk pavement leading to that egress point, but just a thought. I was curious more than anything.
Yeah, fair enough. I would say that as defined by what it is, I mean, concrete stairs into the basement, it is quite needed, and yeah, again, good idea, but I don't see that becoming a spot for another car.
Okay.
Myself, yeah.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right, any other questions from commissioners before we go into public hearing? All right, hearing none, we'll go into the public hearing. Anybody here wish to speak at public hearing? Hearing none, we'll open it up. We're looking for a potential recommendation. So if we were to move this forward, Chris, what would that sound like?
I would look for a recommendation for a zoning change for the zoning change to approve the essentially plan development overlay, keeping the underlying zoning with the requirements of 1 through 10.
All right. Anybody willing to make that recommendation to the city council?
I'll make that recommendation.
All right. Motion by Tillotson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Schumacher. Any discussion?
I think it's definitely an unusual property, so if it can have any use or any productive use with it, I think that would be, it's better than a languishing building, so.
Agreed, thank you.
All right. Any other conversations? Just one quick question, Chris. So it's not a conditional use. Is there any time limitations to complete the work on this one? I love putting you on the spot. I just thought of that.
So just off the top of my head, I know I've done the research on this because we've had to. I believe it has, like, if it hasn't moved forward within, it's either a year or 5, I can't remember, then there's a certain point where it tips and it's no longer good.
Okay.
So.
And I don't know what your timetable is, so I'm hoping it'll be done sooner than later.
For sure, yeah, I can work with a year, yeah,
Okay. And we'll double check that for you.
for sure.
Go ahead.
I don't think that it's worth really even looking into the possibility with that shared driveway space. It just seems that might just cost you time. So again, this is an odd situation.
Right, would you like me to strike 6?
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you can. So your no parking requirement in there, but I think the part about talking about that shared driveway space just doesn't need to come forward.
I'll have that removed with number 6 as no parking requirements.
All right.
All right. Anything else? We have a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. We'll move on to the next item. And the next one is, thanks for being here.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys, thank
You
you.
bet. Next item is number 8 is Continental Properties, and they're seeking the conditional use permit. This one also has a need for a public hearing. And remember, conditional use permit is one of them quasi judicial things where Act 67 went into effect, so we have to really kind of take that into consideration if we're going to make approval or denial on that, but we can certainly, if needed, put conditions on the property. So looks like you have a team here. You can go ahead and introduce yourself and tell me what you want me to do, and you can go through your presentation.
Sounds good. Thanks for letting us come and present to you guys tonight. I figured this is our first time at Planning Commission. I know you guys have a few items, but I'd like to just give you an overview of who we are as Continental Properties and a little bit more about our project, so you can have all the information you need going forward. So if you don't mind, I'll just kind of run through the presentation and then we can discuss. So my name is Dylan Sindrich, and again, we're here for our conditional use permit. So first, I'll just give everyone, again, a little background on Continental Properties, who we are, then run through the details of our project, and then go over our conditional use permit request, which is going to be for a density increase for this project to go from 10 units per acre, which is the base zoning, to 21 units per acre. So just a little bit about Continental. We're a privately held real estate development company based right here in Wisconsin, in Menominee Falls. We have over 44 years of experience in real estate development, and we've become a national leader in the development of multifamily housing. To date, we've developed over 125 communities in 19 states, and over 30,000 people call one of our communities home today. Continental is a vertically integrated real estate development company, and so what that means is that we oversee the entire project from start to finish. So we start with preliminary market research, land acquisition, and then we move into development, construction oversight, and then once residents start moving in, we have property management staff that manage the property. And we really pride ourselves on being long-term owner-operators of our community, and so that's really allowed us to develop a robust customer experience division. We take the data that we gather from the residents in our communities, and we use that to inform our existing properties and the communities we develop in the future to make sure that it's really a quality living experience for our residents. And then lastly, just I want to go over our Wisconsin presence. So we've been in Wisconsin for a long time. We've developed 6 communities here, including 2 new ones, which just broke ground this year in DeForest and then in Mount Pleasant. And again, we still own and operate each of these communities, and we're really committed to the long-term success of our home state. So now just getting into our proposal specifically, and you can go down to the next slide. I just want to orient everyone to the site again. So we're that red marker on the northwest side of the site, near the intersection of Highway 51 and County Highway B. We're part of the larger Stoughton Trailers master plan development that I'm sure you guys are pretty familiar with. We're on if you scroll down to the next one, there's kind of a map here. So we're that parcel off on the west side, kind of has a red line around it. So just a little bit about the master plan, I guess. This master plan was designed really to target density in specific areas, one of those being our site. And what that allows, if you'll see, is a lot of open space, trail connections to surrounding neighborhoods. And so by designing the site in the way that it was, it really opens up a really nice quality development. So our site specifically, we're proposing 312 homes. It's 15.4 acres, and those are going to be in 12 buildings. So most of those are 2-story, but there are 2 3-story buildings which we strategically placed. And then again, the density for this site is going to be 21 units per acre, which is in line with the range of 15 to 30 units per acre that the Stoughton Comprehensive Plan recommends for the developments in this area. The next slide just kind of highlights some of our amenities that we're planning for the community. So we have a spacious clubhouse with a community gathering area, 24-hour fitness center, an outdoor heated pool with outdoor grills, a pet playground, pet spa, and car care center, among other amenities. So we really try to provide as many amenities for our residents as we can. I think the next slide is our 2-story elevations. So we're, we vary our color schemes and our materials. There's also like articulation, so you can see it's not just one flat facade, but it moves forward and back, and we just try to create as much architectural interest as we can from the street. And I think the next slide is our 3-story elevations, as you can see there. So I guess getting into why we're here today, if you go down to the next slide. So again, we're part of this Stoughton Trailers master plan. So the first step in this process was the comprehensive plan update that was approved back in 2023. That kind of laid out the master plan framework, and then kind of started to designate specific uses in specific areas, one of those being multifamily in this area of the master plan. The next step in the process was this official rezone. So our parcel was rezoned from the planned neighborhood to the multifamily residential zone. And then we're here today for the third step, which is the conditional use permit. So part of the process with the new multifamily residential zone is to, there's a base density established with that zone, and then developers can, with a conditional use permit, get an increase in density. So that's what we're requesting again from you guys tonight, to increase that from 10 to 21 units per acre. And the next couple slides just kind of go into, I guess, why we think that this request is warranted. So again, that 2023 comprehensive plan update recommends a range of density from 15 to 30 units per acre for the multifamily developments in this planned area. We feel that our density of 21 units per acre, it's right in the middle of that range. So it is in line with the comprehensive plan. And then additionally, just on the next slide, Stoughton and Dane County really continue to be a very attractive place to live and work for individuals and families, and that's creating really high demand for housing, which is driving up housing costs region-wide. So this is just some data that I pulled from the Dane County Regional Housing Strategy, and according to their 2024 report, More than 1 in 4 Dane County households spend more than 30% of their pre-tax income on housing. However, for our project, based on the rents that we're assuming, 100% of homes within this development will be affordable for families making less than 80% of the annual median income. So by allowing increased density in this area, part of a planned development with easy access to commercial, parks, trails, you'd be allowing for more homes in a high quality area that are also attainable for Stoughton residents. Next, just want to highlight a few things that we're doing to address the comments that we've already received from staff. So I don't know if you guys were able to review the staff report, but we received a preliminary review of our proposal from the planning department. And in that report, if you saw, we are complying with almost all of the base standards from the base multifamily residential zone, but I guess I did just want to highlight a few of the outstanding comments from the planning department and then what we're doing to address them. So first, there is going to be likely, just due to grading, a retaining wall on the southeast corner of the site. So we'll be adding some fencing. Once we finalize the design of that wall, we'll be adding fencing on top to mitigate any safety hazards, and then adding some additional landscaping as well to buffer and screen from the surrounding developments in that area. We're looking at an alternate location for the trash enclosure to ensure that it's completely facing away from Greenbrier Drive per code. And then we're also reconfiguring our bike parking to ensure that there's bike parking within 50 feet of every principal building. The next slide, I just wanted to specifically call out the comment on the minimum landscape surface ratio. So since we're part of this master plan development, our proposal is a little bit different from a typical standalone multifamily development that you would see. So if we were a standalone development, we would be required to provide on-site stormwater detention basins as well as on-site park facilities, and that would go towards our landscape surface ratio, moving it up higher. But because we're part of this master plan, like those stormwater and park facilities are located off of our site, so our landscape surface ratio isn't as high as it would have been if those had been on site. So because of this issue, per the recommendation from staff, we're going to be pursuing an agreement with the city to maintain the portion of those off-site stormwater and park facilities that our development is utilizing, in order to get credit to apply towards our landscape surface ratio. And we're still working through the details of that agreement, but we've agreed to similar things with other municipalities and other projects in the past, and so we don't anticipate any issue in being able to come to terms with the city on that. And then I guess lastly, I have a few pictures of some other communities that we've constructed in the past. I just kind of wanted to run through so you guys can get a bit of a look and feel of what this will look like when it's built. This is our community clubhouse, so this is kind of the hub of our community. It's where it has our on-site leasing staff and property management have their offices here. We have a gathering room. Our fitness center is all in this area. You can keep scrolling through. Again, this is the interior of the clubhouse. So there's a kitchen, a large room. We have like community events in here, but residents can also use this after hours for their own, private events, birthday parties, whatever. We have a pool that's heated with seating and grilling areas, 24-hour fitness center, I think is the next slide, and that's open all times to residents. Another thing is that we really pride ourselves on being a pet-friendly community, so pets are welcome in all of our units, and we build pet parks in all of our communities to give dogs a space to run off leash, pet owners a space to, congregate, and it's an amenity that our residents really appreciate. I think these next pictures are just a couple pictures of the interiors of our units, so kind of the living, dining, kitchen area, and then our bedroom suites. And then lastly, we have a rendering of what this community would look like built out. And then, again, so just to recap, we're here tonight to request your recommendation of approval for a conditional use permit to increase the density from 10 units to 21 units per acre in line with the comprehensive plan. that's all I had for you guys tonight. I just want to thank you guys for your time and your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right. Thank you, Dylan. Are there any initial questions from commissioners before we go into the public hearing? I guess the question I would have, and I don't know who it's directed to, is, so it seems like quite a range for the density in our comp plan versus what's in our zoning. And it's, so in the comp plan it says 10 to 30, was it?
Yeah.
15 to 30, yeah.
15 to 30, and they're at 21. So it seems like a pretty big range. That's per acre, is it?
Yeah, and I wasn't here during this update to the comp plan, which is interesting because prior to changing the zoning code, it was in direct violation of the zoning code. So up until that was changed. So that's why I was like, man, you threw me, again, throwing me for loops
That's what
here.
I do.
Well, may I?
Yeah, sure.
Comprehensive plan is, we're in the process of changing it because
Right.
it's insufficient. It was badly done last time. It's more of a guideline more than anything. It's not set in stone. We changed our zoning so that we would not be doing plan developments. Plain and simple. There's a reason that our zoning is where it's at. We just changed it for that specific reason. That's your density that you want. It's not the density that the council has considered and approved for currently.
I mean, I think that our understanding is that the zoning was established because the planned unit developments were becoming a problem, that in order to get the density that, developers needed to make projects pencil, that, you were having to come in for a planned unit development in order to meet the standards. And I think the really nice thing about this new ordinance that you guys have put in place has been really easy for us actually, is that there's all of the base standards that you guys have set into stone that are like, hey, you need to comply with this, and that's the rule. And that's been really nice for us because we just know, hey, we need to meet this, and then there is that flexibility with the density through the conditional use permit process that we're able to come in, and if we're meeting all of those other standards, that we're able to get some flexibility on the density so that we can make the project work, but also really work within your zoning code and make sure that we're in compliance with the things that you guys really want for your developments, to make sure that they're high quality and that they represent the values of your city.
Well, that's an interpretation of it. What our codes, what our zoning is that this is what we require. If you want more, then you need to make this something special, and I'm not seeing anything special about this. You talk about connections. I'm looking at your renderings, and I know they're just renderings at this point in time. I see no connections to the outside world. You have basically sidewalks to get your people from your parking lots to your houses. Your landscaping is mundane at the best. But like I said, it's conceptual right now. Your buildings are nothing intriguing. They're pretty standard commercial apartment buildings. Let's face it, that's what they are.
I hear you on that.
So the speciality that we're looking for, I'm not seeing it at this point in time. You need to bring us something to show us that why we would want to increase our densities to make this a special place that would be intriguing and different. And it's not there.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I do think that that's a fair point. I think at this conceptual stage, the landscaping isn't fully fleshed out. And I can appreciate that, this really, in my mind, is a centerpiece development for you guys, and that you want that to be, high quality. And I completely agree. I think that that's something that we can address through our landscaping plans as we progress towards, those final drawings, is ensuring that we're providing, high quality landscaping, especially in those, along those public streets, along that school property in the back, really making sure that it's something you guys are proud of. I think as well addressing the sidewalks. One thing that is really nice about this area is that we do have that, I don't know, you can kind of see it a little bit just to it's on the north side. It's like, yeah, that. So we do have that multi-use trail connection that runs next to our site, connects past the Stoughton Trailers headquarters through that park, and then it's also, my understanding is that in the future it's going to continue to connect to the east into those neighborhoods to provide that connectivity. And that's certainly something that we can do, once we get a better understanding of the grading on the site, is make those sidewalk connections from the building directly to that trail, and then as well the buildings facing along that Greenbrier Drive, we can add sidewalk connections, move those buildings up so that they're, accessed from the street, if that's something that, Planning Commission and planning staff really feels like would add to the design and, good design of the community, I guess.
All right, any other comments from commissioners? I guess a couple things I would follow up on is, as far as the density, I think what I heard is part of the reason is you're trying to make them more attainable, which it is a huge emphasis in Dane County right now, and I'm on actually 2 committees with Dane County to try to help address that, and Chris is on one of the committees with me as well, and certainly density is one way to try to accomplish more attainability and better land use too. So I'm not that concerned about that, and I guess the thing that I think that really helps it is the amenities, because you have more amenities in your project that we see on others that have less density. So you have the clubhouse, you have the swimming pool, you have the dog area, you're right next to a big park, so that gives the folks an opportunity there. If they need to get away from the density, they have a place to go.
100%.
In the past, we haven't had that in all of our developments. So one of the questions I have, and I don't know if you have the answer yet,
Yeah.
is the number of acres for the stormwater area that you're considering trying to include that as part of the landscape, basically.
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I don't have that off the top of my head, but I don't know if you could
I
make
believe
us-
it's this is off the top of my head,
Yeah.
1.7 acres short on the landscape surface ratio.
Yeah.
That's
So it's
that's
about
off
2
the,
acres.
roughly.
Yeah, because that also, if you take that into consideration, it lowers the density a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, this is a unique development in that it's part of this master plan. Like, I think that our intent and the intent of the whole team that's been doing this whole master plan is we want to preserve as much of this really nice central open space as we can. And so that does mean that, to, like you said, provide that attainable housing that, this community really needs and there's a lot of demand for. It helps to target the density a little bit stronger in a few specific areas that make a lot of sense so that you can preserve that big open park. And then again, to your point too, I mean that when you do have those parks, amenities, open spaces, it makes living in a higher density community much, easier and more attractive.
Yeah, and I guess the last point I would make on the density is you mentioned a couple of them will be 3-story. So really, if you were to make them all 2-story, you would have less units, you'd have less density. So having the 3rd story, even though it adds density, it doesn't take any more land to do that. Any
Yeah.
idea how many units would be in the 3rd story in them 2 buildings?
Yeah, so our buildings are 24 units, the 2-story buildings, and the 3-story just 36. So they're all 12 units, just be adding basically another floor on top.
Okay, so it would be similar to having 291 units.
Yeah, Exactly. And then, yeah, to that same point, to hit that same unit count without the 3-story, we'd have to add another building with more parking area and.
So in order to really make the numbers work, yeah, you could have more open space, but you'd have to probably go 3 stories in more of the buildings.
Yeah, and I think that's the other consideration too, is it's, and that's another balance with the landscape surface ratio is, you can get a really high landscape surface ratio if you build really tall, but we're also trying to, understanding that we're right next to an elementary school, close to single-family homes. We want to be kind of a transition use between the higher density commercial developments that are coming in on Highway 51 and the single-family neighborhoods. We really see ourselves as like a nice middle ground buffer area between those single-family and the higher intensity, closer to the US 51.
Okay. I think that's all I had. Go ahead, Commissioner Marieski.
Where are you parking? Where's everybody parking in this development?
So just in it's kind of hard to see because it's like an angled view, but you can see in here, this is going to be surface parking. We've kind of laid it out so that there's parking in front of all the buildings so that residents, have parking close to where their entrance is. They don't have to walk too far.
So,
Nothing underground?
no.
Yeah, you can see the smaller buildings in the parking islands. Those are our garages.
So there again, that would be the trade-off is you could do underground parking and create more green space, but it's also going to increase the price per unit for the tenants. That would be the trade-off, I would think. Because it's more expensive to park underground.
And I think that's something that we've seen too in our other communities that we have here in Dane County is that we have some communities where we have a higher ratio of covered parking, and that is an amenity that some residents like, but we do also because those garages cost money to build, we have to charge for them. And some residents, they would rather just park outside in order to save money. And so that's why we do build some garages, because some residents, they would like to pay to have a covered parking spot in the winter. Others, it's not as important to them. So we provide some, but not so much that everyone kind of is required to pay, and then therefore they incur higher costs.
Anybody else?
What would your trade-off be then if you maybe only offered underground parking in 1 or 2 of the buildings, thus eliminating some of those garages?
You would potentially pick up more parking, but with this site, we're actually already over the minimum requirements per the zoning code,
Well, I'm
so.
not concerned about parking. I'm concerned about getting the LSR back.
Oh, yeah, so if you were to add underground parking, it's just really hard because it's very expensive. One of the biggest issues with that is, obviously you have to do all the excavation, but then you can't do wood frame underground parking. You got to do concrete and steel, which is like an entirely different type of construction. Concrete and steel, especially since the pandemic, are very expensive. And so, in order to offset that increased cost, that's kind of to the point that we're making. That's why you have to build taller. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but the development right at the corner of US 51 and Greenbrier Drive that they just finished their second building, that has underground parking. It's also 3 stories. They don't have as many amenities outdoor that we do, like a pool, clubhouse kind of thing, and that's because the cost to construct is a lot more, so they need to cut down on the amenities, and then also just they're charging a lot more for rent than we're going to be doing. We're trying to come in at a lower price point to provide an attainable housing product for those that can't necessarily afford the higher end, covered parking.
Right. This would be, I'm only saying like 1 building. If you have one of your 3-story buildings with an underground on the north end, because you could work with the terrain that's in there, because that's a lower portion than the southern end of this development in there. You could have 1 building offered with underground parking, and that still would be, you have 90% of the rest of your development to gain your affordable housing in there. You could have one premium building with that, and you'd probably also regain your LSR.
Well,
And I understand
yeah,
that it's costly,
yeah. I think that
Well, if they want the LSR, then.
I think
Right.
it would be difficult for us to, I think just from a construction standpoint, it'd be really difficult. I don't think we would really be able to do that. I also think just from the landscape ratio perspective, I mean, once we kind of realized that, hey, this, landscape surface ratio is going to be something that we're going to need to work with staff on, we did look at, okay, what happens if we do remove a building pad? How would that affect our landscape surface ratio? Or if we do reduce parking? And 1.7 acres, although it doesn't sound like a lot, it would have required us to take away 3 or 4 buildings probably. And so that's why we're just looking at it more from the master plan perspective and what can we do to, and I think part of this as well is that by entering into this maintenance agreement, instead of trying to hit the landscape surface ratio on our own, on our site, by entering into a maintenance agreement with the city, we can also take away some of the city's costs, because right now these facilities are being dedicated to the city and the city's going to be responsible for the maintenance, but we are going to help offset some of that cost, basically in exchange for a little bit of flexibility in the landscape surface ratio in the strict interpretation of it.
My concern with always going back to the master plan sort of thing with each one of these developments is I think that that's eventually going to consume all of the available space within that master plan. So if the first one that comes out is going to eat up some of that, then that's less and less for the remainder of them to try to figure that sort of thing out. So, I don't like the concept of having to borrow from this. This is, I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. So
Sure.
what the job of this commission is to look at each specific development, not necessarily as an entire whole plan. So, we've made the developers agreements already, and we've expected everyone that comes in with any development further on that to comply with the things that we've set out in the developers agreements. So what we're asking you to do is to comply with the things that we're asking you to comply with.
Yeah, and I completely appreciate that. I think that this was, again, when we took a look at this was the best kind of solution that we came with. Like, okay, what can we do to work with the city to make sure that we're giving some, because we are agreeing to incur this maintenance cost, and then, the city is, helping us out. It's like, what is kind of the middle ground that we can meet at that works best for all parties? And so I think this is kind of the solution that we came to, but we're, also open to, working with you all as we agree, as we work through this agreement, if there are additional conditions that you guys would like to see, whether that's, enhanced landscaping or other things that we can do to, if we're not able to strictly meet the landscape surface ratio number, like what can we do to make sure that the landscaping that we do have is, very visually pleasing and attractive and a high quality, as opposed to just saying, hey, we're going to hit the 50%, but it's just all sod, so that's, I totally hear you on that point. And I think that we can work together with you all to make sure that you guys are happy with the product that we're producing.
I mean, I get that, but I think adding fancy bushes and trees aren't really an answer to that. Once you occupy land with a building or with asphalt, you don't get that back.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. That is true.
Bottom line on that. So what we're pushing for is to maintain the level of that green open space, without borrowing from someplace else, on each individual development. And that's why we've set these standards the way that we set them.
Yeah, and
This
Because
is,
we have to live with this product after this. You
This
guys
isn't-
can walk away from it and you're fine. We want to be able to see this so that it's the best possible product that we can offer to our citizens. And we're responsible for that. So
Yeah.
that's why we're the tough gatekeepers on this.
no, I completely appreciate that. I mean, yeah,
and what you're still failing to understand is that what we've asked you for to start with is not a negotiating tool, period. There's no, well, if you help us out with this, we'll help you out with that. This is the bottom line, what we will get, period.
yeah. I appreciate that.
And then going back again to wanting the planned development, it's got to be special, and I'm not seeing it, and I'm not hearing it coming out of you either. So I'm just
Yeah,
giving you
yeah,
fair
no,
warning.
I appreciate that feedback.
You know, you've talked about this, that, and the other. I see, I'm not seeing vision here. I'm not seeing anything about, you know, you didn't talk about things for your tenants, like charging stations for their vehicles. Are you going to have solar for this development to help offset the cost of their utilities? Are you going to design your parking lot so there's a 60% shade coverage within 10 years of all asphalt? Are you going to,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not hearing anything.
Yeah,
All
well,
I'm asking for you, I'm
Sure.
hearing for you is that
Sure.
we crunched our numbers. We're not getting enough out of what we want. We're going to try to squeeze more into it, and we're going to call that good. So I'm giving you up front, you know, this is your first
Yeah.
kick at the can, and I hope you come back and you give us something that's extraordinary.
And so I guess, I mean, I would appreciate, you know, if there are things that, I did hear you name some specific things there. I mean, EV charging stations, that's actually is something that we are just starting to implement on our communities. I mean, if that's something that the Planning Commission really feels like is important, I mean, we can certainly do that.
And I'll give you a hint here. If it doesn't come from this committee, it will certainly come from council.
Sure. Sure. I guess, you know, what I'm hearing right now is, I mean, I don't believe, Chris, does this go to, I don't believe that this actually does go to city council. Oh, it does, okay.
Conditional use does.
Gotcha.
The SIP would be approved here.
Okay.
Is kind of the process. So, Chris, so on the multifamily zoning, what is the density per acre? Is it 10?
We don't have, if it's over 10, that's what triggers the conditional
Okay.
use. So,
So it can be within the range and still be consistent with the
the
code?
problem is right now, under the conditional use requirements, they're not meeting the 50% LSR.
Right.
And so, not to get ahead of ourselves, but essentially, the developer must satisfy the minimum LSR ratio of 50%. The developer must provide a site plan establishing that it is satisfying the minimum ratio on site, or enter into agreement with the city that is acceptable to the city, requiring the developer to obtain and or maintain regional stormwater areas to get credit for offsite facilities to apply to the LSR ratio. So this is all needs to come back and be in an agreement. And this is in addition to the SIP approval. Like if you guys decide, and this is your decisions, right? So if you decide to approve the conditional use permit, they have to come back and meet the satisfactory of that 50% LSR. We can't flex anything with a conditional use permit. It is the minimum requirements. So they would have to come in and satisfy that through an agreement with the city. I want to make that abundantly clear. So if you guys don't want to do that, then it's a denial. Or if you want to do that, that is a condition of approval.
Yeah, and I would just share that at the staff meetings, you know, I think you know, we pretty much feel comfortable with establishing the agreement. We're up to 40-some stormwater ponds, and if the developer is, plus there's some off-site ones, if the developer is willing to accept responsibility for that maintenance, staff believes that's a win for the city.
Well, and then also additionally, and I can talk to some of you guys after the meeting a little bit more about this because it's going down a rabbit hole. Additionally, a minimum of 30% of the development gross site area needs to be provided. Essentially, that's green, usable, open space at 30%, because we don't necessarily want, when we were looking at the overall ordinance, 50% could be, it's a very loose definition of maintained open space, which could be stormwater. But if we're looking at quality of living, which is what we want for the residents at these places, we need to make sure they have usable green space. Like, so that is in our ordinance at 30% as well. But they don't meet the 50% currently.
And then the other thing I would add is when we agree to the developer's agreement, this is one of 2 lots. I forget how big the second lot is.
You always do this.
I can't remember.
It's the lot to the south.
Yeah.
I think it's lot 49.
Yeah, I can't remember how many acres that one is.
It's smaller. I want to say it's like 5 acres.
Right. So, and the reason I bring
6.
that up is, so this is what, 15? So it's 20 acres. When we went through the TIF agreement and all that negotiations, the pro forma and the agreement was based on 400 units across the 2 lots. They're on pace to meet that with their proposal. And that's really what the finances were based on. So I think that what they're presenting is consistent with some conversations that we had at City Council. Now, those aren't Planning Commission conversations, those are council conversations regarding the tax incremental financing agreement that we entered in with STI. So that's one of the reasons why they put together the proposal in the way, is because those were the numbers that we had anticipated and agreed upon as far as the density for this property. We do have a need to go into a public hearing. Are there any other questions before we do? Hearing none, we'll close our regular business. Anybody wish to speak at the public hearing? Hearing.
I do. Rob, online.
Okay, Rob, can we get your last name for the record?
It's Mossman, Mossman.
Okay, and we're gonna have to get an address too for the record.
1717 High Point Circle.
Okay. All right.
Which tells you that I'm overlooking all of this.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, my concern is to the density. You're putting, I'm going to say ballpark 600 people into this area, 321 units. You got 550 car spots in there. This is going to be crazy for all the surrounding areas as these people decide that they're getting out to go to work in the morning. The road on B, the intersection, is going to be nuts. Yeah, you're going to, in theory, have a roundabout over the other end of the road, eventually on 51, and then everybody's going to start coming up the side streets into our neighborhoods. We've got, mainly duplex and single detached homes in this whole area, and you're throwing a large concentration of people all into one spot. And I think that impacts it. I also think the amenities are a bit of a joke. I saw 3, the exercise room has, 3 units for 600 people to use. This is just hey, we're pretending that we're giving them something that they can use.
All right.
That's just my comments. I think it's too many people in the concentration. It shouldn't be that high.
All right, thank you for your comments. Anybody else wish to speak at the public hearing? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Any other comments from commissioners? So what we'd be looking for,
I actually have one thing as I'm looking at this, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
sure, go ahead.
I am just curious, it might be in here, but if there is anything in this plan that has anything that is below surface, a storage, a shelter area, any, basement, something, anything along those lines in this plan?
Go ahead, not that I'm aware of, but go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah, no, as of right now, no.
Okay, I was just wondering, I know this area historically, many years ago was, we've had a situation with some severe weather, and just kind of thinking about that as a potential something to think about.
Sure. All right, thank you. I don't know if we typically have anything for the multifamily that would be like that.
This is another, my understanding is that we don't have, so just an FYI, the multifamily residential is considered commercial, right? It has to meet the minimum requirements of commercial. What I was reading up on when this came up the last time was that we could pass ordinances that require higher regulations with shelters, like you guys all understand what I'm saying, which would, my guess is it has more to do with insurance, so it would lower insurance costs for the city. And I believe this was a discussion I'm looking at you two, council, was that correct? Do you remember having this discussion? And you, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, as far as in the building, I don't know if we can require anything that exceeds the state building codes, so it'd have to be separate to the building.
Yeah, it was, I remember we discussed it because of stuff coming up with the single family and then requiring the basements, because it was a planned development, so we could require it. And then I looked into it, and we can't require necessarily basements or like shelters / areas unless it's commercial, and then we have to go through an ordinance change, and it might even be at the state level. And it's something we can look into. I have no problem doing that. I really want to bring Rick in on the conversations, though. So, but we can't, I know for a fact we can't do it for single or duplex, essentially. But when it's taking into the commercial box, there might be an ordinance we can pass.
Yeah, and I'll just address a little bit on the traffic. So this development currently has Greenbrier, which will go around the entire development, and as the council members know, that we're working with Dane County with 2 access points. One would be, right off coming out of the apartments going toward B, just extension to Greenbrier there, kind of going, I'm going to say, to the left, okay. And then the other one would be at Country Club Road. And, preliminary discussions with the county suggest that there may be a second roundabout there. But we're still waiting for Dane County. They're backlogged on their traffic impact analysis and their approval process for this access in particular. So we'll learn more about that. But basically, the point is they would have to meet, the county's traffic analysis requirements in order to be able to do this. So yeah, there'd be more traffic, but it would be designed in a way where the infrastructure would be able to handle it. So, I think that neighbors are always concerned about traffic. but it's designed in a way and it's developed in a way where it will accommodate that. So you want me to go to the planner's report?
We can. Would you guys like me to move on to my planner's report? Okay, so this is staff recommendation. Staff recommends the following conditions subject to approval. So number one is it needs to meet the minimum requirements of the MR zoning, and then I quote, the zoning code. A review of the proposal is attached to the report that was sent to the developer on May 14, 2025, outlining minimum requirements. And additionally, this has to come back for an SIP approval. I just thought I'd throw that part in. Number two is the developer must satisfy a minimum LSR ratio of 50%. The developer must provide a site plan establishing that it can satisfy the minimum ratio on site or enter into agreement with the city that is acceptable to the city, requiring the development to obtain and or maintain regular stormwater access, to get credit for off-site facilities to apply to the LSR ratio. The developer must satisfy the conditions before the building permit will be issued for the project. Additionally, a minimum of 30% of the developer gross site area needs to be provided. Number two, and just for the record, I don't like your renderings for this reason alone. I'm not trying to pick on you guys. They're like, the way that it looks on those renderings, it looks like you can look out the window and you will see the school, and that is not going to be the case. There is over a 20% slope there, and you can see that when you're looking at those green lines. It is significant. So the rear of the building will most likely need a retaining wall due to the slope. There should be some kind of fencing with landscaping installed for safety reasons at the top. I just want that noted. In addition to it having to come back for an SIP approval and all that fun stuff, I'm having a hard time seeing it, like how it's going to play out and work, and I want it documented. I question with like what they're going to have to do from the back side, how much of this development you're even going to see. Because I mean, what's the slope on that? Like, how tall is that from bottom to top?
The slope from the, like, I guess where this elementary school is, I think it probably is like 15, 20, 25 feet. I don't know exactly.
There's a significant retaining wall needing to be put in place, and it's going to be like, I think
Sorry,
if,
the
yeah.
wall won't be, I don't think the wall will be quite 15 to 20 feet, but we are significantly below. Like,
Yeah.
School.
So,
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you guys.
Apologies.
Yeah, and that was, in the early stages when we were talking to STI about laying out the plat and the lots, we purposely located the multifamily behind the school for that reason, so it wouldn't overlook the neighbors in their yards, especially near Eggleston's Woods. So this was strategically placed behind the school and the church there for that very reason.
So number three is the development is tied to lot 50 of the Stoughton Trailer Gate East Plat Phase 2A, and then at R-04-2025. The plat has still not been filed. The plat needs to be filed and infrastructure installed for Phase 2A prior to occupancy of the buildings. We have to have that access out onto County Road B before we can have people living there, and we have to have the road built, and that's important, and it needs to be noted. Number four is approval of the Department of Public Work, Stoughton Utilities, Building Inspector, Fire Inspector, and all other city departments. And number five is any other conditions identified by city staff or the Plan Commission. And then if you go down, I have the preliminary review of what we're seeing there and what kind of stuff needs to be answered. And I think this is stuff that we could get more into during the SIP approval. So we can, for those purposes.
All right. And as you heard during the presentation, some of the items that were in Director Munz-Pritchard's report are already being addressed, so it doesn't sound like you have any issues with the retaining wall. You mentioned the bike rack and the trash enclosure.
So just like, I know I say this to you guys all the time, so I apologize. I always send this stuff out, try to get it to these guys at least 2 weeks prior so they understand the stuff that they need to address, so they're not just getting like blindsided. So this is all stuff I tried to send out 2 weeks prior to be like, hey, these are things that we need to see, because they're requirements. So
And again, yeah, as I mentioned, I mean, we're going to meet all of the comments, listed here. We're going to make sure that we're complying with all of those standards.
Okay, any other questions or? All right, so what we're looking for is a potential recommendation on the conditional use permit. And then it also says, let's see. Part B was the SIP. Were you looking for anything on that tonight, or was
No,
that
the
just?
SIP is going to have to come back when we have more information, but
Okay.
right now it's to consider a conditional use permit for the multi/apartment authentic per section 78-105 G3A located at parcel, and then it has to reference the parcel because it is not filed currently, so it has to reference that plat.
So then, basically, if somebody wanted to entertain a motion, it would be to approve the conditional use permit with the conditions that you've outlined in your planner's report?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's where we're at. Anybody willing to make that recommendation to the council?
Okay, so, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I guess if we're, not at a point where the planning commission's ready to approve, we'd be happy to table and come back in 2 weeks with,
It'd probably be 4 weeks.
or sorry, 4 weeks. Apologies.
No problem. So then I would ask from the commissioners, I think we have a few notes. Is there anything else that you would like to see? And I see somebody, is that one of your team members back there? On the end, somebody raising their hand?
No, I just stretched, sorry.
Oh, okay, all right. Anything else that I want to make sure they have clear direction on what to bring back at the next meeting? So what do we have so far? I mean, we have the items that they agreed to. There was some conversation about density, underground parking, and the agreement.
So I think the biggest one is that right now, you guys we can table it. I want to make that abundantly clear. But per state code, they're not meeting one of the minimum requirements, and that needs to get hammered out. And so you guys want, I think, direction with the landscape surface ratio is what we're looking for. So it's meet the density, it's take over, not density, sorry, meet the minimum requirements of 50%, I think the 1.7. So that's where we need to go with this and what you guys want to see to meet those requirements. And I don't know if it's, what do you guys want to see? Do you want a development in place? Like, what do you want to see prior to the conditional use permit being approved? Do you know what I'm asking? Okay, thank you.
I think just to see those requirements all met before, usually once we give the conditional use permit in there, then we lose some control on that.
The genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah, so
So I think what we should do, and please jump in if you're not on board with this, but establishing the agreement with so what I'm hearing, better tie in to the parks, moving one of the apartments to maybe a luxury apartment with underground parking so we can reduce the surface area on some of these, and then any other negotiation points that maybe can be put into what was number 2 on the conditions, and that get discussed and approved most likely at council, because that's who would have to do it. It can come here first, but at council needs to go through approval, and then we can bring the conditional use permit back. Is that what I'm hearing? Are you guys, okay. All right.
Anything else?
say just to some of the suggestions that Mr. Mayaski's made regarding the sustainability features in there. I think if you were to add a number of those in there, I think that would definitely loosen up some opinions based on, otherwise it's just it's a blocky apartment development and we're looking for something different there. And I would think STI would be looking for something different there as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate your guys' feedback tonight, and, we're gonna get back to our drawing board, and I appreciate your comments, and we're gonna, incorporate those and come back with something that you guys can get excited about.
All right,
you.
thanks again for being here. I
Thank
guess
you.
We'll see you at the next meeting.
All right, appreciate it.
All right.
Do we need a motion showing that it was tabled? I think we
can
need
either
to
take
because it
no
was a
action
public,
or we
okay.
can- We can take no action or we can postpone.
I think we have to do an action just because
I asked that,
it was public.
yeah, I asked that we make a motion to
Move to
table.
postpone.
Okay.
Postpone.
Second.
Motion by Majewski to postpone. Second by Tillotson. Any discussion?
Yeah, postponement until next plan commission meeting.
All right, did you catch that?
I did.
Yeah. All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? All right, we'll see you at the next meeting. Thank you again. Okay. 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 You're solo, huh?
Well, I wouldn't say just me.
All right. Item number 9, redevelopment authority, rezone to plan development, public hearing, recommendation to council. Do I have the right thing on the screen here? Is this correct?
Yes.
All right. You can go ahead and introduce yourself. Is it on? Yeah.
Yes.
And just tell me what you need me to do on the graphics.
No problem. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Plan Commission, city staff. My name is Jake Fleischman with the Alexander Company. Typically, you're probably more familiar with my coworker, Dave Voss, who's currently out of the country. So I will be kicking us off this evening. I'm joined by JSD and Potter Lawson, who will do the majority of the presentation this evening. I am just here to reiterate the Alexander Company's support and truly excitement in partnering with the City of Stoughton in this opportunity to produce a meaningful infill development in downtown. We truly believe it will be a catalytic project that will, meet the community's needs through quality design that pays homage to the past of the area, but also helps better prepare the city for its future. And, we're really excited to be involved and collaborate with you all along the way. So with that, I will let the team kind of take over, and I'm here to assist with questions as we move forward. Thank you.
It looks like you have a couple different things in the packet, so I'm not sure which one. I have this one, and I have this one.
It's the,
This one, or this one. I think this is the one that came in today, isn't it?
That's not the riverfront, that's downtown.
This is just a PDF. The other one is the PowerPoint, is that
Oh,
correct?
it's the same thing?
Yeah, it's the same thing. One is just a PowerPoint, which we
All right.
prefer if,
All right,
We
we'll
could.
just go with this one if you're ready. Just,
we prefer the PowerPoint if that's possible.
oh, we can do
We've
that.
had several hiccups
Or is
today, if you haven't noticed with,
Well, if we-
We started the day with no internet.
we started the day with no internet.
Yeah,
So,
That's always fun.
yeah.
If this crashes, we can always go to the PDF. That's why it's there for
Okay.
an emergency.
okay, perfect.
Yeah, so, well, thanks, Jake, for the introduction, and thanks to the Plan Commission for listening to us today. As Jake mentioned, my name is Kirk Bedrowski with Potter Lawson, architecture firm, and here with Jacob and Joshua from JSD. They do civil engineering and landscaping for this project. In this project, we are requesting approval for a general development plan of a plan development for this site. We believe a plan development is necessary so that we can achieve the very high design principles for an urban development through site planning, contextual preservation, and neighborhood engagement. It is our contention that this project is contextually, culturally, and historically appropriate for the site. It fits within your comprehensive plan, It provides for current needs of the city, it enhances overall character of the area, and is a huge improvement overall over the current state of the site. For these reasons, we believe this warrants an approval for a planned development. Next, yep, yeah, there we are. So the full site is broken into 3 lots. Lot 3 is designated for a city park and will be designed by others. Our contribution to the park is the location of the Wagon Works Way Street, the size and approximate location of the retention pond, and providing connections to the park itself. Lot 2 is a future market rate multifamily building site. The current illustration is just for context only and will probably change in the future. Lot 1, which is bound by South 4th Street, East South Street, the additional extension of South 6th Street, and the new Wagon Works Way. There are also 5 existing single-family homes to the north of the site. And the area within Lot 1 is what we will be mostly addressing today. The next slide, please. So this is a 3D render of the context of the site itself. So this project represents a very unique opportunity for the city of Stoughton, honoring the intent of the comprehensive plan's desire for an elegant land use transition pattern from historic context to residential, while also addressing some of the city's needs for affordable housing options and a beautiful new park. In short, there are 3 current zoning code requirements that are inhibiting us from achieving these goals and provide the city with the best possible project. They are the current setback requirements, the green space requirements, and the building facade design requirements. I know there's more into that we can get into, but those are kind of the general requirements that we're looking at here. Throughout this presentation, we'll address each of these issues and explain why we believe that planned development is warranted. This 3D aerial view of the site illustrates how well the project folds into the existing fabric of the neighborhood and why a planned development is appropriate for this project. The partie of the site is 2 L-shaped buildings anchored at the corners of the city streets. This design accomplishes a few things. First, it creates a strong and engaging street edge along all street faces, which is critical for any neighborhood development of this type. Second, it places parking to the interior of the complex, making it easier access to parking for tenants while hiding the parking lot from the public. Third, there is only 1 street access to this site, which is not access off the major streets, so minimizing traffic concerns into and out of the complex. Fourth, the building locations minimize the impact on the existing neighbors to the north, opening up the site and allowing maximum light, park visibility, and an air breeze through the existing neighborhood homes. Fifth, by positioning Wagon Works Way in this location, the amount of land dedicated to the new park is maximized. As a result, the project property is squeezed, reducing the amount of green space on the lot. Essentially, we're giving up some private green space for public green space. Allowing for a larger public green space is more valuable to the tenants in the community as a whole. Next slide, please.
Just a quick question on
Yeah.
this one. So in between the buildings there, that's a path?
In between
Going
the
up
buildings is
towards-
so two
That's their
things.
that's the
There's-
access to their
There's a drive.
parking lot.
I want to make it abundantly clear, and we need to concentrate on this particular lot, because I don't want to I know last time we started going kind of like with the park and all that stuff, and that's not this, like, sorry, Mayor, I'm yelling at you.
I'm just trying to understand how it ties into the existing development.
Yeah, and we will definitely go into our connection points.
All right.
But right through the middle of the site right now, that's our drive access. But we do have some sidewalks that are coming off of that as well to connect us to the sidewalk. And then we can talk about how you access across the street, whether we do
Perfect.
crosswalks or however you guys want to lay that out, because it's a city street. So,
Okay.
let's see, where am I?
Next slide.
Yes, next slide, please. So this diagram, and you've seen this before, illustrates the difficulties of creating an appropriate multifamily layout within the confines of the site property lines. The site does not afford the space to make this a viable project at the current 25-foot setbacks. In addition, larger setbacks can create a broken streetscape, destroying the sense of enclosure and community engagement. Reducing the setback requirements improves the project's relationship with the community. New urbanism design principles have gotten away from large setbacks that can create gaps in the streetscape and result in wasted, unusable green space along the street edge. By reducing the setbacks, the wasted green space can then be used in a more practical way on the interior of the complex. These added benefits reduce the number of transient residents and increase the desire to live in these complexes, which benefits the community as a whole. So reducing the setback is also very beneficial to the city as it creates a more calming, enclosed, engaged neighborhood. Next slide, please. Oh, it's got to be, there we go. So this first slide illustrates the experiential impact of a 15-foot setback, which is what we're asking for, as opposed to larger 25-foot setback, which is what the current zoning is. Please note that the building face is still 5 feet from that setback, making the building 20 feet from the right-of-way. Balconies overhang within that 5 feet to create more passive engagement with the neighborhood. If we can go to the next one and go back, you can kind of see, if you can go backwards. I don't know if that's possible. That's fine.
It'll go back. We just gotta.
So you can kind of see how the, oh, please go forward again.
You want this one or this
Yeah.
one?
And then the next one again, that'll be enough. So just kind of showing the differences between the 25 and the 15-foot setbacks. So these next, it's fine to go to the next one then. These next slides are real-world examples of how reducing the setback makes for a more pleasant experience. The images on this slide show how the sidewalks can be right next to a building and still be enjoyable. They are not precedents and would not be representative of what is happening on our site because we still have a 15 to 20 foot green space in between, whereas these are like 0 to 5 feet of green space. So terrace planting beds and stuff, which may be appropriate in some of these locations, may not be in this project. Next slide, please. This slide and the next slide are examples taking of the streets in Stoughton. These show how reduced setbacks help the walkability, the engagement with balconies, and help preserve the fabric of the neighborhood. Conversely, the next slide. Also in Stoughton, as illustrated in this slide, larger setbacks create wide open gaps in the neighborhood fabric, resulting in swaths of broken, unusable green space. The narrower streets also aid in calming traffic. Drivers naturally slow down in more compressed spaces, resulting in fewer accidents. So that's the opening part of this. I will turn this over now to Jacob and Josh, who will talk about civil engineering and landscaping.
Next slide, please. As mentioned, Jacob Webb with JSC Professional Services, civil engineer on this project. We took a preliminary look at the overall development here for the Stoughton redevelopment project, looking at the 3 lots that will be developed here, the 2 private multifamily lots as well as the city park. We took a concept level at the overall site grading and utilities, as well as the public improvements, but we will focus on lot 1. As part of the overall development, stormwater management is anticipated on the lot 3 area that is the city park. Preliminary geotech investigation and stormwater management was done prior. That showed basins closer to the river. However, they were not feasible for the stormwater management infiltration. So we have preliminary looked at a wet detention basin size closer to the right-of-way that will provide stormwater management for this overall development. This will be designed by others, but we took a preliminary look at sizing as well as shape to show how much of that outlet should be designated for stormwater management. And then next slide. And now focusing on our lot 1, as mentioned, we are requesting a 15-foot right-of-way. However, the buildings set are 25 feet or 20 feet from the right-of-way currently that provide the balconies to not encroach. There's 5-foot balconies that extend, so the building will be paced 20 feet. However, the setbacks were desired at 15. We will be meeting rear setbacks as well as working with the RDA and planning. Currently, we have adjusted our site plan for the parking lot to provide a 5-foot pavement setback along the residential lots to the north. You also see on this some of our connections to the right-of-way in forms of sidewalk, as well as throughout the facility. And some of the concept level site amenities, including some garden boxes, a dog run, community spaces in the form of patios, pergolas, grill stations, and so forth, to provide amenities in the open space area for our residents. As well as in our preliminary grading, we have laid out a few retaining walls that will be required for our site grading, which moves us into the next slide. Looking at the overall grading, our finished floors of these buildings will be set off of East South Street to provide that direct access to the north. And the existing side road to the west slopes towards the south, so the right-of-way development on the east will slope south as well. We are providing a variable finish grade along the buildings to minimize the steep slopes as well as the need for retaining walls along our building face. This will give us balconies for our units along those right-of-way lengths. The parking lot grade will be set at the finished floor. This currently sits lower than the residential lots to the north, which will require a retaining wall. The parking lot will be lower than the original lot, so you will not see the cars coming into the site. And also the underground parking lot is near the elevation of the right-of-way to minimize those grades as you come into the site, but retaining walls will be needed to separate these two grading and pavement areas. On-site stormwater, we took a preliminary look. If you just go back real quick. Thank you. Working with the RDA, we have provided some bioretention basins on site where infiltration is more feasible further away from the river. This will provide additional stormwater quantity and quality measures as well as requested green infrastructure for this lot. And now we took a quick look at utilities. The next slide. As part of the public improvements, water and sewer mains will be extended. These will provide services to our buildings independently. And there is an existing storm sewer that runs from the street to the north, South Street, that will need to be rerouted around our lot, and with an easement that's routing that directly to the south to maintain its existing discharge. This affected our building layouts while there is open space in the middle to provide that storm sewer additional outlet to the south around of our buildings. And an on-site storm sewer will be routed to the right-of-way connection that ultimately discharges to the stormwater basin. And then we will move into landscape with Josh.
So the general approach to the landscape kind of focuses around two elements. We really wanted to complement the intentional design of the architecture, really utilizing a specific landscape palette that kind of brings some of those Scandinavian, Northern European aesthetics forward. And then also we knew that, you know, this was a really nice building, but we would like to use the landscape to kind of soften some of those edges, you know, on our corners and things like that, where we can use some vertical stuff, as trees and shrub plantings to kind of help better transition the building. Next slide. We've identified the different zones that are associated with your landscape standards, and it is our intent to meet or exceed all those standards. So we just wanted to make sure we understood where those were occurring, and that's what that diagram does. Next slide. The features we're looking at, we wanted to make sure that, you know, the residents in here had a variety of amenities, including a dog park, because that is kind of a major component. 21st century apartment complex is accommodating people with pets. Raised beds for planting. You know, maybe small community garden kind of elements for the tenants, giving them that space to, you know, maybe have some local vegetables that they can have themselves. An amenity barbecue area, we think that this is key. We want people to be able to get outside and meet in groups and be able to do that on site, and especially within that short kind of relationship of going out your back door kind of thing to make that happen. Other things would include, you know, typical site features, benches, fire pits, bike stalls, etc. This slide here kind of starts to get at that character element of our landscape. We definitely want to integrate some of those more natural features. Specifically, as part of that, you know, native plantings are key. But also, I want to highlight that retaining wall, the gabion wall. That's one of the things we've already started to promote as part of the kind of the design aesthetic. We like that look. We think it helps soften it as opposed to just having, you know, more concrete elements create those functional retainings. Can you go to the next slide? Additionally, one of the things was original thought was, hey, we know that there is existing. You can go back to that previous slide, please. Right. We know that there is single-family residences in the same zoning district that we are in, but we wanted to make sure that we were being good neighbors to the south. Well, that section here starts to show an elective screening buffer that kind of helps address those issues. We know we have our parking that is close to their property. We want to make sure we're screening those headlights so that they're not affected in the later evening. But we also want to make sure we're preserving their views through the main corridor down to the riverfront, and that's what we're showing here in our intent to do that. We want to not go too vertical. A typical screening fence is about 6 feet tall. If we were to put a 6-foot tall wood screening fence in there, you wouldn't be able to see through. So that's the last thing we want to do, is take away those people's enjoyment. So we kind of put together what we're calling a rail fence and a limited evergreen screening buffer kind of on the top, just again to help knock down that the headlights that are associated with people coming into the property. Next slide. And so when we specifically talk about our landscape plants, this is a kind of a smattering of what we intend to use in this area. Really want to emphasize the integration of native plants. We think that that's key. That kind of takes on that Northern European aesthetic where we're really embracing nature. We also want to consider seasonal interests, whether that's flowers or things like the red twig dogwood, which, when it loses its leaves in the fall and the winter, it has a vibrant, bright bark to it that kind of has that interest. And then also, we kind of think about these spaces, habitat for pollinators. When you have that seasonal interest, you add those flowers, you're really kind of trying to think of this as more of an urban ecosystem, and that's definitely something we want to focus on.
Thank you, Jacob and Joshua. So we want to address the concerns over the site connections using this colored site plan. So as mentioned earlier, the severe slope from the north to the south of the site makes direct access from each of the ground floor units impractical. Essentially, for every 2 feet of elevation change, we would have to add about 4 feet of length of stairs, along with the additional hardscape sidewalk to get us to the city sidewalks. This added impervious area would further reduce the amount of green space on the site. The steps could become an ADA concern as well, as all the units will need to meet ADA requirements, standards, and some are required to be wheelchair accessible. In addition, direct connections to the city sidewalk can become a privacy and safety concern for the residents of these units. If you can click. So here we're highlighting that we understand the desire for direct connections. So we're providing a total of 6 walkout units on the north end of the building, which makes more sense because that's the more residential side of the building. In addition, it's also the flatter side of the building, so it would reduce the amount of steps to none or very minimal number of steps. We feel that maximizing the connections for the majority of the tenants is better than emphasizing the minority that live on the first floor. Click again, please. So these highlight that we have at least 5 shared connections to the surrounding streets and parks. 2 from the buildings to the north, 2 in the buildings of the south, and then 1 from the central location. I know we're showing 2 sidewalks, but we'll probably reduce that to 1 to try to help with some more of that impervious area reduction. Next slide, please. Any questions on that first, I guess? No? Okay. So it is our goal to create a project that is unique and specific to the context of the site, the neighborhood, and the city. The site has a history of being an industrial use and is adjacent to existing industrial buildings to the west and the east. Single-family residential homes abut the site to the north, and the city of Stoughton has a strong cultural connection to, oops, I missed one here, sorry. This is my bad. So this next series of slides show the floor plans, sorry about that, and the unit layouts for the buildings. Something of note here is that north is facing to the left in this one. Essentially, we turn the building 90 degrees counterclockwise in order to get the layout to fit on this. So north is actually pointing to the left. The parking area does have EV stalls as well as some EV-ready stalls, and the roof will be built to support PV panels as well. At some point, hopefully, be able to put those on there. The 2 buildings will have identical layouts, except between the first floor, if you go to the next slide, the next 2. So this is the first floor of the first building, the next slide. This is the first floor of the second building. The second building will contain the fitness room, as well as the community space that's shared by both buildings. Next couple slides here. So these are the rest of the layouts. All right. So here, I'm going to repeat myself here. So it is our goal to create a project that is unique and specific to the context of the site, the neighborhood, and the city. The site has a history of being an industrial use and is adjacent to existing industrial buildings to the west and east of the site. Single-family residential homes abut the site to the north, and the city of Stoughton has a strong cultural connection with Norway. We wanted to honor all these seemingly disparate concepts and found that link through Norwegian and Scandinavian design concepts. The use of simple forms accented with bold movements help to both in the use of both soft and hard materials help define this design aesthetic. Next slide. Deep roof overhangs are another motif found in Norwegian Scandinavian designs and emblematic of a residential aesthetic. Next slide. The materials of Norwegian Scandinavian design ties everything together. Soft wood emotes a residential scale. Dark metals, especially with standing seam, connote an industrial aesthetic without being overbearing. Splashes of bold color are commonly used as well, as illustrated by the yellowish building in the upper right corner. Next slide, please. So this is the result of all of that. So this view is the corner of South 4th Street and Wagonworks Way. It demonstrates how all of these concepts come together to form an attractive and unique apartment complex. Most strikingly in this image is the deep roof overhang that is further accented with a bold color. The rest of the building is meticulously divided in an appropriate scale for the design and building size into soft wood material and what appears to be a deep seam metal building. Ironically, the wood material is a painted metal, and the darker material is a cement board with a board and batten siding. And I do have some samples here for you guys to see. The darker elements take the shape of a modern industrial warehouse with a pitched roof. The sloped roof is elegantly resolved in the large overhang of the roof at the end of the building. And to maintain the simplicity of forms, as the design precedent dictates, while adding interest to the facade, the darker elements are interrupted with the wood-like material at interval proportional to the building. The overhung balconies add additional depth to the facade while creating passive engagement with the neighborhood. Breaking these into smaller segments would destroy the fabric of the concept behind this design. Next slide. So as we move along, we can see how these same motifs happen across the rest of the building on the different facades, and also how the building engages with the street edge. Next slide, please. As we continue into the interior courtyard of the complex, the building rhythm adjusts and resolves into a change in hierarchy between the wood materials and the darker materials. This shift signifies a change from the city side into the more intimate residential space. The wood box becomes emblematic of a home that is wrapped with the historic industrial elements of this site. Next slide. The entry locations are highlighted with yellow panels to make wayfinding easier. A canopy is designed over the main entry, signifying its hierarchy over the other entries within the design. As we turn the corner to the next slide, as we turn the corner to the East-South Street and South 4th Street, the softer wood element takes precedence once more to relate aesthetically with the single-family residential homes. Next slide. And this is at that corner as well, the other side. One more slide. So once again, we view how these buildings relate with the overall context of the area. The scale, design, and the aesthetics of the buildings are very respectful to the existing context. The buildings form a strong street edge with all the streets. The long portions of the building face away from the residential neighborhood and complement the industrial buildings to the west. Multiple connections from the site allow for engagement from the site to all sides of the neighborhood. Next slide. So a view from the park further illustrates how the building fits contextually and proportionally to the area. The buildings provide a nice backdrop from the park view, enclosing the park and allowing the visitors to feel a feeling of safety and comfort. So in summation, we believe that the project before you is an excellent option that will be a positive improvement to the area and worthy of a planned development approval in order to accomplish all the goals of this project. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there initial thoughts or questions from commissioners? Okay, hearing none. Yeah, we have to do a public hearing, so we'll close the meeting and open it for the public hearing. Is there anyone that would wish to speak at the public hearing? Hearing none. Oh, come on up. Go ahead. Yeah, we have to be able to hear you.
It's for the minutes.
There's people that are also logged in virtually, and they have to be able to hear you as well. Thank you for being here. And what's your name?
I'm Julie Dixon.
Okay.
I just had one question. All this building that's happening, is this actually going to be occurring around those few remaining houses on East South Street? Okay. That was all I wanted to ask.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think it was in one of the slides. Let's see if I can find it.
PDF might be easier.
Yeah, so this kind of shows it right here, right?
Yeah, it just seems like there's going to be a lot of disruption for those people that live there. No.
Okay. All right, anybody else? All right, we'll close the public hearing. So what would you like to do at this point, Director Munz-Pritchard?
I can go through my planner's report, and then I'm going to go through line by line, and I want you guys to give me direction on how you want to proceed with some of this. But a little bit of housekeeping before we start with that. So I'm not going to reread all of my planner's report that gives you the history and filing and yada yada, but I do want to point out on number 2, right there. So to give you a little bit of background, when we were looking at the RDA site originally, I reached out to Mark Fisher because I wanted to know how much the road would cost to build. And when we were looking at this is the cheapest way to get from point A to point B. And that was why we went the direction that we did with the roadway initially. So right now we're looking at creating a CSM, and it's going to start, and I wanted you guys to know this, it's starting at the Parks Department. So it'll first be at the Park and Rec Board, because essentially we need to look at what's going on across the street and how that fits into the overall design for parks. Then it'll go to the RDA, and then we'll get recommendation and preliminary approval. The city is the actual one that's doing the CSM on this, so just more of an FYI. So I wanted you guys to know kind of how that was all working out, and then when it would get to you all. So the project was presented at the meeting on April 14th. The feedback I received from several members was the following parts. I had a couple of members stop and talk with me, or stop me on my way to my car. So some of the things we saw was incorporating a tiered retaining wall and landscaping material while integrating into the ground floor level, adding modified balconies, modifying the wall facade to highlight the unique feature of the building, making them more visible from all sides of the design, breaking up the roof line, utilizing 3 different types of texture on each of the buildings, removing the yellow, and retaining only red accents for consistency. So I'm just letting you guys know some of the stuff that I was hearing, and it's not verbatim, it's just kind of an overall. Additionally, there was a little bit of confusion with some of the stuff that was being presented. That's not necessarily what we're going to be seeing on the landscaping. So that was another thing, and I wanted to make sure that was put in here so they understood. So the review of the proposed project and listing the exemptions being requested. The developer is requesting a plan development. While plan development allows flexibility, flexible project design, the Planning Commission needs to establish standards to protect the health and safety, to ensure design quality and conformance to the overall plan. In other words, a plan development is a give and take between the city and the developer, with the city giving flexibilities and the developer bringing unique development to the table. The developer is requesting the following flexibilities from the zoning MR zoning district with the plan development. Number 1 is the landscape surface ratio. They're asking for 36%. Currently, it needs to be 50%. front yard setback of 15, it's a minimum of 25. 25% of the gross site area, minimum requirement is 30, and requesting not to meet the minimum facade requirements of multifamily. Per the zoning code, the planned development district is intended to provide incentives for redevelopment in areas of communities that experience a lack of revitalization or that require flexible zoning treatments because of factors that are specific to the site. This district is designed to forward both aesthetic and economic objective with the city by controlling the site manner, and then it just goes into. So here's what we're recommending. I'm going to go through each one of these, and I want direction from you so I can make sure I'm getting this done correctly. So and I'm not going to read off the exact area, minimum landscape surface ratio is 50 cent. Minimum landscape surface ratio is a minimum permitted percentage of the gross site area, which must be preserved as permanently protected landscape area. LSR is calculated by dividing the total land area by the GSA. So the request is a landscape surface ratio of 36%. A landscape plan has not been provided to show how the point system can be met in addition to this too. So this should be noted on the plan development. I want this noted because I don't want to come back and have to amend our plan development because you guys can't meet the minimum landscape like the minimum points system. So if you can't meet it, we need to know now because I want it added in. So this is what I'm recommending with the LSR reduction of 36 with the following added. Where the grade of the front yard slopes at a ratio of greater than 2.1%, multi-level retaining walls should be installed. Design should be placed throughout the project and tied directly into the street yard landscaping, creating functional balconies for the first floor residents in addition to helping prevent erosion control for the site. Retaining walls are beneficial for holding back and reducing water. So that also helps with the issue of, because I think this whole area slopes down directly from up here, and so they're not just dealing with their site, they're dealing with all of that area. Landscaping points could be allowed to the landscape. So if they do this tiered system that we're asking with the sloping, we can, if we want to figure that into the landscaping points, that's what I'm suggesting for the landscaping points. And I'm going to circle back to this, but I want direction on like, okay, if we establish this, then do we want to finalize it during the SIP approval, or do we want to, like with some of these variations? So the on-site detention shall be redesigned per section 66-904, parentheses 8, and be integrated into the landscaping. I know that was something that you guys were leaning towards. Any areas that are abutting single-family housing shall have a buffer yard that includes a retaining wall with screening to prevent headlights from shining directly into the property, which I believe that they showed an example of that. So if the plan board finds it appropriate, it can be approved as a condition with the plans being approved in the SIP. Otherwise, the applicant will need to provide something before they go on to zoning. So what I'm asking for you guys is if you find these appropriate, or if you want other ones added or taken away, or however you want to go for this request of the 36% LSR, if you guys are okay with establishing this now, or you guys can put stipulations to approve it during the SIP approval when they move into developing the landscaping. Am I making sense? Mm-hmm. Okay.
So just a quick question. So the relationship between the landscape surface area and the landscape points, are those, how are those related?
So it's interesting because in some ways they're not. So like the landscape surface area is essentially 50% of the site needs to be what would be considered like maintained space. So that could be like a retaining area. It could be anything, right? It could be that space between, where the property line is to the house. It could be any of those spaces. It has to meet 50%. Now we throw in the minimum landscaping points, which still have to be met.
In that area.
Yes, yeah. And so that's like how many bushes need to be planted, trees, all of that stuff. So there's those two factors. One, they're asking for the flexibility for the landscape surface ratio, which is 50%. And that's why I brought up the landscaping points, because I want to make sure we're not doing this again, right?
So then my question is, I don't know if you guys have analyzed the points and.
We'll meet points. We'll meet or exceed.
So then the question is, okay, you can meet the points with a reduced area. What is that going to look like? It's not going to be like all jammed together and overwhelming. It'll still have the proper spacing that it needs to look and
So-
be successful.
The points are associated with the total area, the LSR, so if you shrink the LSR, your landscaping points are still meeting that kind of same ratio. So you'll be able to meet them, it'll look great. It is what it is on
You're going to
that.
help me out with that?
I'm going to help you out a little bit.
Thank you.
Because I
It
think.
was like it's actually it's on one of the
Yeah,
pages too.
I think one of the suggestions I made to the last group that was here, and I think would be beneficial for you also, seeing that you want a reduction, is that your parking lots be 60% shade covered within 10 years by your tree plantings.
Okay, I think that's something we can get close to.
I guess we'd have to see, because we definitely, I'm sorry. Can we take a look at that? Just because of, right now, we don't have any space behind that parking lot. We only have like 5 feet, or is it?
Well, all our parking
So-
is close to our landscape strip, so we'd be able to put,
Okay.
some
I just want to
trees
make
in
sure
there,
that
and-
our trees aren't tearing up the sidewalk and everything else that's
So-
going too, so.
By using that, you're putting in larger trees so you can cover your hard surface
Mhm.
with shade. I think that will help you with your landscape points. And
Yeah.
also, that will help with the fact that you have less, your LSR is less, and this will help, at the very least, buffer some of that hardened surface.
Yeah. The only thing that I'm somewhat concerned about is some of those tree placements would be on the north side of the building and making sure we get enough sun as it is, kind of. But we should be fine. We have areas that I think we can accommodate those trees pretty easily.
It's a suggestion.
Yep, no,
So just, because I have it actually attached, so just like what I did with the other
You're welcome to
group,
sit there too.
is that, just like what I did with the other group, I went in and I looked at the thing, look at their proposal, and then against what we currently have for the multifamily residential, and then I sent them out the write-ups and what they had to meet. So right now, the landscaping worksheet, which is actually on here, shows the landscaping points that they have to meet, because you're looking at the linear feet for the building foundation gross floor area, the street frontage point requirements, and then paved point requirements area. And it's actually in the report that I would have sent them 2 weeks prior. So I think it's a lot of points to meet, and that's why in some of this, I emphasize by saying, I don't want to come back here to find out you cannot make points. In addition to, I was like, if they do the retaining walls the way that we're asking them and then show it, we can offset some of those points, because I think those are important, and it's going to make the project look nicer, and it's going to give some of those spaces that we want. So I'm just, and you guys can overrule me on this stuff too, but with that said, having the bar saying, okay, if it's got a 2-to-1 slope, you have to install this stuff, and you have to tie it in these ways. So that's what I'm looking for, because it's measurable, right?
Chris,
And-
can we get some clarification on that?
Hitting 60%? I believe hitting 60% of shade coverage on a asphalt surface is measurable.
Yes. And that's what, you're right, and that's the kind of stuff that I need that kind of stuff. And in addition, if they're meeting this, do we want to reduce points? Do you know what I'm asking? Okay.
Can we get some clarification on that 2-to-1 slope? Are you talking across, from the north to the south of the building? We do have 2 large retaining walls right at the edge of our buildings right now. And if we're able to maintain the stormwater management appropriately with what we have, shouldn't that be enough, and it shouldn't be dictated by
I'm going to
actual
let the plan,
tiered?
yeah, I'm going to let the plan commission, just because this is the whole thing, is it's a given, you know, it's a give and take. And if they want to see these added or taken away, that's their call.
I just want to say that there's different ways of doing exactly what you're trying to say that may not require these retaining walls in that area. If they are required, we will put them in there, but I'll let,
Currently, there are no areas that are 2 to 1. With the variable grade along the buildings on the perimeter, our max slope is 4 to 1 to the building face. That is with the exposed foundation to the finished floor.
Okay, so you're showing retaining walls on your drawings, which I am just seeing them looking down. And this is kind of why I wanted to go through these and go point for point and see what they want to require. Because I just didn't want to, you know, I want to see what they want to require for the plan development. All I know with the stormwater is off-site, which I had Mark looked into, and I know that we're going to have runoff from additional, but at this juncture, like, we're trying to establish if they want to add any additional criteria for reducing it from 50 to 36%. And that's what I need from them. And that's why I was like, how do you want to approach this? Do you want to approve this now, make them come back, or do you want to approve it during the site plan approval? So do you want to put a pin in this, or do you want me to circle back? What would you like, how would you like to proceed?
I guess I'd like to see it, we can look at more specifics during the site plan approval,
Okay.
because I think we could probably hypothetically, theoretically go back and forth all night with it. But as director's pointing out, you know, the things of what she's looking for to make the whole site compliant, you know, pay attention to what she's asking for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it would be important that when you leave here tonight, though, you're clear on the direction that you're getting. So if you have any questions about any of this, you know, if we can't answer it tonight, we can follow up, you know, with an internal meeting. But we don't want to hit you at the site plan and then say, oh, now we want this, that, and the other thing. And you guys are like, well, if we would have known that, we would have incorporated it earlier.
And that's really why I'm trying to lay these out now. So that's what I'm trying to currently do. So,
And we're just trying to get in front of that.
And we appreciate that. You know, the WIDA application is kind of open now, and so we want to, with the development agreement and everything like that, we want to make sure that we're keeping on schedule and making sure that this is not just kind of an ongoing. We want to make some progress with you guys as well. So we appreciate that.
so
So are there any questions about anything we covered so far? Do you guys understand kind of what the request or, you know, the thought process is on the first item here, which is the LSR?
I think I do. I want to confirm with the rest of the team that that's understood and ensuring that we meet the necessary point threshold for landscaping.
we are looking, right now, that's one aspect, but right now we're looking at approving the 36% and what criteria we're putting on that. So, for example, number one, I was like the grade first slope, retaining wall, and then adding those points. Is that a direction that the Plan Commission would like to go? And that's what I'm looking for from them. The on-site detention pond actually references one of our sections. Number two, and number three is any areas abutting single family need to have that buffer. They're meeting that. It's good to have, though, in as part of the zoning approval. And then if we want to allow for additional points for that. So I don't know if you guys want to go 1, 2, and 3 approval or come back, or how you want to. I'm looking at you guys for this.
So what I heard is so far is the commissioners are willing to consider that in the site plan, but I think it would be important for the development team, if you think there's more than one way to skin this cat, to bring those options so we can review them ahead of time.
Can I just interrupt real quick?
Sure.
For point 2, the on-site detention, we don't have on-site detention basins, we have on-site bioretention basins. The detention will be off-site in the form of the public park for the regional stormwater management. So that section is not applicable as
So
their
we can
bioretention
update
basins.
that.
All right, so you guys want to eliminate number 2 then? Because I don't, it's just basically making it look natural is the way that I read the ordinance, and that's why I referenced it that way. And if that's not the direction you guys want to go, that's fine.
No, I think that's, you're right.
Okay.
We want a natural form, a natural looking form, not a rectangle, triangle, hexagon, parallelogram.
Right. Yeah, I think we use the word curvular.
Yeah.
Is that a word?
Something
That's the word. we
Linear,
use.
yeah.
But,
curvilinear.
yeah, but are you saying that,
So it looks like it's a pond.
Yeah,
That's
you're saying
naturally
it's a-
occurring, not something that's been dropped from
is
the
it
sky.
a detention pond or is it a
It's like a dry
swale?
basin.
It's a dry.
It's a
dry-
bioretention basin
yeah.
with the plug plantings, the minimum ponding depths and so forth, engineered soils for infiltration. That is just a concept, that's how much area we need. We can play with the figure to make it look more natural into the landscape.
Yeah, I think,
That's essentially what number 2 is referencing,
Yeah.
is making it look more natural.
Okay,
can we change that so it just says that then?
sure. Yeah. So I think we're all on the same page with that one now. Okay, it's similar to what they're doing at Man Park right now.
With the number 1 item, Chris, so, I know they're saying that they've got it handled at one point. Are you seeing it differently than what they're
So
talking?
I would like to see the landscaping plan, because we know there are essentially, we're seeing retention air, detain. Wow, I'm speaking great all of a sudden. We're seeing the walls there, and I don't know why that's not being integrated better into some of these spaces where we could use them for not even necessarily having to connect to the street, but that could actually end up being somebody's patio. And it could look really nice. And sure, we might, and we can come back to this, we're flexing on the second and third unit, but that first unit, because of the fact that we have the landscaping the way it is, and some of them we're tying in and some of them we're not, this could be the compromise with that 36%. And also into that 25%, which is supposed to be essentially like usable green space. So
My question would be, is there any particular challenges in doing that? Is it cost, aesthetics, engineering,
Yes.
personal preference? I mean,
Yes, all
You
of
want to
that.
go first and then
Yeah.
I'll.
You can handle the cost end of it.
I mean, I'm
But
sure if you
as,
thought it
as
was
we
a-
mentioned, for every 2 feet of elevation change, we're talking about 4 steps that are almost 4 feet in length, and then we also have to have our connections to the city with the sidewalks, which will be more impervious area in the area. Now imagine we have at one end, at the furthest end, 6 feet, and at the other end, 10 feet. So you're talking about a 20-foot, 12 to 20-foot long steps at the south end of those buildings. I mean, those just look like these daunting, steps that you have to get up to get to somebody's apartment. And then we also have issues with privacy and accessibility as well. Because they all have to be accessible units. Now, not all of them have to be wheelchair accessible, but we also don't want to be limited on which ones we choose as wheelchair accessible units.
So when you say privacy, you're concerned that somebody walking the trail might stray into somebody's patio area?
Somebody just walking up into somebody's patio area, we'd have to have gates and stuff on them, which, there's an added cost to that as well, instead of just having an enclosed space that somebody can sit on, and then maybe we can have some landscaping around it and make it more of a private thing than make it feel like a front door, because it's not the front door to the building.
Mm-hmm. And then, just if I can interject,
Yes.
to add on to that, there's a real cost associated with not just the materials and putting that together, but the hardscaping of, flattening all of those and moving earth is really, really expensive at the same time. It's also, from my perspective, and I believe from the team's perspective, counteractive of what we're trying to accomplish with these balconies. We keep talking about passive engagement with the streetscape and creating these hierarchies, right, is creating a direct delineation of separation at the same time. So I think it's not like you're gonna have, I think a balcony that doesn't have a walk-up is, in this context, going to accomplish a very similar thing if it had 5, 6, 7, 8 steps. We go to Chicago, we go to New York. I know they're much more urban populations, but you have these massive stoops, and sometimes it's not creating additional engagement.
So just to be clear, I said in this, it didn't necessarily have to tie in to the street in this particular. I said the design shall be placed throughout the project with tiers directly into the street yard. So tiering down, landscaping, creating a functional balcony for first floor residents. I didn't say anything in this particular area about tying in. In addition, it can help prevent erosion control for the site, and the retaining walls can be beneficial for holding back the redirection of water. So the ADA, we're not talking about it having direct access at this juncture. This is what, this is one of the compromises for the reduction of the 36 in addition to the 5%. And I don't know what that looks like because I'm not seeing like some of the sidescapes for the retention area, like the retaining walls as we sit right now too. I didn't have any landscaping plans in addition, so I don't really know. And I understand that you don't want to invest in these things now. You want to establish the zoning. I completely understand that. But these are the kind of things that we would be looking for during the zoning. Does that make sense?
I mean, yes, I think one of the things we want to kind of take a step back on and really hit at the character of the area in which we're developing. When we look at what's around us and we look what's across the street from us and we look at kind of the LSR relationship, I know we're looking on this, but this is not a greenfield suburban multifamily. We have park space that is directly adjacent to this across the street, as well as the larger park that's across the river. We also have adjoining residential that has those kind of reduced setbacks, that higher lot coverage. We have the industrial that has the higher lot coverage, and we have a couple blocks away, we have the central business district that has a 0% LSR. What we're designing kind of is that kind of gradual transition from those more intense districts. And that's part of, I believe, some of the design thought process was that the characteristics we're requesting, those development standards, would be more of an urban neighborhood as opposed to a suburban neighborhood where you have that higher LSR. Is that correct, Kirk?
I think the thing is that you heard Continental, and they have 36 acres open across the street from them.
Yep. And if we're doing redevelopment, and if
Yeah.
they're doing greenfield,
Right.
we would be following the rules as Mike. But when you do redevelopment and you're trying to create that urban form, that 50% number doesn't really reflect what the historical context of the areas around it is. And that's what we're trying to do, is just be like the stuff next to us, which has got that higher lot coverage, especially the industrial, which is what we're taking our kind of some of our design aesthetic for. So it's just, it's not really like we're like, hey, we don't want to follow this. We're responding to what's around us.
All right. Any comments from commissioners on that one?
Just on this development area, like I don't have as much concern about the 36% in this one. It's a brownfield redevelopment, and you're going to fit in what you can fit in to this space. It's another one of these kind of unusual areas that you're trying to work with. I know the slope doesn't help things any either. And I think at least on this first, or in the first request, I think 2 and 3, the points that we had in there, I think we've got those covered as well. I mean, I think we're still disconnected on this number 1 point, and that one I think would be, you know, it seems like you could probably work with Chris to figure out, because I think we're not seeing how the landscaping plan itself goes, that it's hard to envision what we're looking for in it.
So I guess my question would be is, if we're good with 2 and 3, can we deal with 1 during the site plan?
That's,
Are you comfortable with that?
yeah, and that's your, you know what I mean, this is your decision, and I'm comfortable if you guys are comfortable. I just want to make sure that I can give guidance, because I don't,
So I do have one concern about trying to completely shade all the parking lot, is then we would then definitely be blocking the residential views from behind the lots. I forgot to mention that earlier. So if we hit 60% and we get that shade coverage, there goes their view alley. So let's catch 22 there.
Life is hard.
Well, if that's something, you guys make that recommendation that you want that 60%, I'm pretty confident we can make that happen. But that is that's an unintended consequence.
Let me ask you a question. You go to the grocery store or the hardware store or like
Yep.
Home Depot or whatever? You go there when it's summertime?
Yeah, I write codes for requiring landscape over commercial parking lots.
So when you go to those,
Yep.
where's the first place everybody parks?
I mean, it's under the
If we
tree.
can.
No, I agree with you. We said we can make that. We're not arguing against it.
I'm trying to make a point here
Yeah.
also. My point is that our world is burning up. This community is really concerned about that. We're looking at making sure that one of the reasons you're talking about putting solar panels on top of your roofs and having them ready for them and such matters is one of the concerns. This is just another little aspect of that. We're trying to cool our world, trying to make this place, our small little corner of the world, as habitable as possible, and we believe that's a good start.
Yep. I mean, we support that.
Yeah.
We also
I'm
like,
just saying.
I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page
Yeah.
of those
I
consequences.
think what we'll do is, you know, on items like this, you guys can take a closer look and see if there are opportunities that we can try to get the best of both worlds where we can, and where we can't, then we'll make that call at the site plan. Say, we can put the trees here, here's how many rooms it's gonna block, what do you wanna do?
I think that's an appropriate compromise for right now.
Because we're not gonna solve that
Yeah.
tonight, right? You
Yeah.
guys need time to do your homework.
We're landscape architects, or I am. You know, I definitely like putting in trees, so.
Well, we appreciate that. So it sounds like, number 1, we'll do some additional work. Maybe we can have an internal meeting with your group, and we can bring back maybe some options at the site plan. We're good with 2 and 3, is that what I'm hearing? So then we'll go on, and are we good to go to the next section?
number 4, I'll say something like, I'll add number 4 for you and say 60% shade for pavement areas, and I'll put plus or minus so that if it comes in at like 58, we don't have to come back, okay? So,
We could glue leaves onto the tree.
Okay.
Let the grass grow longer.
All right, so we're going to B, is that where we're at?
yeah.
Okay.
So minimum front yard, street yard setback is 25 feet per right-of-way. Front yard, they're asking for 15. Recommending the reduction of front yard setback if it meets the following requirements. The developer should design the building that engages with the street and sidewalk, adding linear planting beds, landscape material, help establish public versus private. This should be coupled with the above multi-level retaining wall system that we had talked about. Number 2 is corners should be tiered in a way that does not basically impede the vision triangle, and that includes like landscaping, obviously, too. Porches and balconies should be well integrated into the overall design and provide usable open space for residents, tenants focusing on the first floor with the reduction in front yard setback. Retaining walls and landscaping should act as a safety buffer from the street traffic. here's my normal, if the plan board finds it appropriate, can approve the conditions with plans being approved at the SIP, otherwise the applicant will need to provide the above before the zoning. So again, what direction would you guys like to go on this? Do you want this approved during the SIP?
And we can
Okay.
we can do the same thing. We can do it all during the SIP, or you can say one or the other, or all of them are good now. Doesn't really matter to me. I mean, I just want these guys to know what to expect when they come to the SIP.
So 1, 2, and 3 can be approved during the SIP. With that said, number 2, just an FYI, this is in our ordinance, and I can absolutely say no way, Jose, because of we need vision triangle stuff. So, okay.
Yeah, and the way it's laid out, I mean, vision triangles are basically on the roads, right?
Well, so right now they're showing some of the retaining walls at those corners, and that is slightly a concern.
Vision triangles will impede the way I understand it, the vision triangle will impede into residential areas, into the lots, and the city has required those homeowners to remove vegetation on their property so that vision triangle can be maintained.
For people in the buildings, or are you talking pedestrians and
No, I'm talking
bicycles and vehicles?
I'm talking vision triangles are for vehicles.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So I just wanted to point that out. It's a condition, but it's
No,
absolutely.
It's not a condition, it's a
Yeah.
requirement.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
Tom.
and I don't really
Thank you.
see a lot of areas where I think it would come into play, but
The tiers, like on some of the plans, they're showing,
We wouldn't have
yeah.
those in the vision triangle, so.
yeah, right.
that's okay.
If you saw any tiered areas like that, that was just kind of conceptual, hey, that we could do something here.
Okay,
Okay, so minimum 30% of the development GSA shall be held as permanent protected green space, and it's 25. Okay, recommend the reduction front yard setback if I don't know why I said front yard setback, so essentially what it is adding outdoor usable space is being provided in the form of open space areas used for recreational amenities and buffers, which is accessible to residents. The open space should be equal to that or greater of 5% of the minimum requirement. This may include the increasing of porches, balconies. So look, essentially the GSA is usable green space, but what I've seen in other communities is it counted towards usable open space, and if they increase these things and can meet those 5% regulations to offset, that is a really good compromise there. So that's what I'm suggesting on this.
you guys have any issues with that?
I just want to clarify, you're saying we can use balconies as open space and patios.
Yeah, it says, so the open space should be equal to or greater than 5% of the minimum requirement. This includes the increase of the porches, balconies, as well as integrating into the overall design provided usable space for the residents' tenants focus on the first floor. Due to this being a planned development, the commission may require a higher percentage. This increased percentage should be a reasonable compromise for offsetting both the green space requirement and the lower percentage of the LSR. If the planning board finds it appropriate, there's that whole, it can approve the conditions with the plan being provided in the SIP. Otherwise, the applicant will need to provide the plans prior to. What would you guys like to see here?
Well, first of all, clarification.
Sure.
He's asking if we can use the balconies.
Yeah.
First
so,
of all,
oh, go ahead.
From what I've heard you read is you're talking about areas on the ground level only. So there are no balconies on ground level that I know of. So I would assume you to strike balconies out from
I can do that.
statement.
Okay. Porches. Okay.
Does that clear it up?
It clears it up, but not in a good way.
Sorry. I know what you're thinking.
As Chris mentioned, there are other communities that use balconies especially for urban infills, because there's less green space that you can use. So they consider those open balconies as additional open space to help relieve some of that pressure.
We'll just call it a compromise for now.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to strike that, and then we're going to recommend that for C as one of the zoning requirements. So I will put that in. And what I'll do too, when I list this in the resolution, is I'll put suggestion to be approved during the SIP approval. So it, like, at least it's documented in the zoning, but it gives us the flexibility. So, so D is requesting not to meet the minimum requirements of the multifamily residential. So I based all of these on our feedback, okay? So suggested by Plan Commission members, incorporate a tier retaining wall and landscape material while integrating with the first floor outdoor. And then I use the measurable that we used on the first one, which I don't know if we want to rehash that or not.
I don't.
Okay.
We're going to deal with that during the site plan, right?
So we'll put SIP approval. Okay,
Maybe
but
an
that'll
hour
go
ago
into.
I would have considered it.
No. Suggested by Plan Commission member, adding functional balconies. Measure, this is like a
So
measurable
when you say
compromise.
functional, I was going to ask you earlier, are you talking about functional like for the resident to use or for it to be part of the landscape or the exterior?
You gotta let her finish the statement first.
So the measurable lower levels should be considered patios and integrated into. So, yeah, so I think both, you know,
Both,
so
okay.
if they're usable balconies, we need to make sure, and it would be nice, and not just for this group, right? But it would be nice if we had minimum patio requirements if we're requiring that, and then even echoing into that usable open space area, because, and that's a pin that we need to put in this for a different
I
time.
don't know what the requirements would be, like size, shape.
Yeah. So,
Because the amenities, you know, they're going to have the grilling area is going to be separate. You can't have people grilling on your balcony.
you cannot, that is a fire code.
Yeah, so it's really just size and shape.
Yep. So,
Square footage.
yeah.
And I would think there would be, I don't know, are there patio doors or are they typically just,
Their patio doors is what we're
so a
showing.
patio door is pretty
sliding
standard
door.
size, isn't it?
Yes, our patios right now are pretty standard 5 by 8. I mean, actually, it's not even standard. That's a little bit larger than some of the other ones we've worked
So
with
we should be
before.
good,
So,
is what you're saying.
we
on
think
that
so.
part
We
of
think
it.
they're very usable patios and balconies.
Okay.
They're not Juliet balconies or anything like that. Like, it's not 2 feet depth that
Yeah.
you're.
Enough to get
Yeah.
a lawn
Barely
chair
able
or
to
two
get-
out there?
Absolutely, and a table.
Okay.
Sure.
So, suggested by Plan Commission member, modifying the wall facade to highlight the unique feature of the building, making it more visible from all of the sides. That was one of the suggestions. Measurable requirements, breaking up the roof line and facade. The following needs to be incorporated into the design. And these are suggestions, and you guys need to tell me what you're thinking here on this. So, I actually really like number 3. The one unique feature on this building is that triangle, but it's only on, it really needs to be on all sides, quite frankly, and it needs to be better integrated into the building, because that's the one thing that stands out from this building. Like, so,
Is that feasible?
No.
Okay.
Well, here's why is that roof overhang feature is the resolution of the sloped roof component. And that's why it's unique to that, is that it's how do you resolve that interesting sloped roof component on a flat roof building? And that's how we decided to do that. And it's on 3 sides of the building. And then we also have our entry that has a peaked roof too. It's really just not on the South 4th Street side direct facade. But as you're going up and down South 4th Street, you will experience that on both sides of the building. So we think by putting that in the middle there would completely interrupt and destroy the concept that we're trying to do here with these unique forms that are coming off of the sloped roof area. It's very unique to have sloped roofs on a flat roof building, to be able to integrate those two successfully without it looking like a jumbled mess. So that's the whole purpose of those things.
Okay.
so measurable requirement, breaking up the roof line and facade. The following needs to be incorporated into design. Facade length is not greater than 25 feet. It needs to have the recess and projected with setbacks and, from the plane. recessed projected upper level on the ground floor, vertical division using different textures, division of facade into unique units, windows, balconies, lighting, so on, and then roof form variation goes into all of that. Number 4 is suggested by Plan Commission member utilizing different types of texture on each side of the building. They have 2 right now, adding a 3rd. Measurable, and that's essentially what it says under the measurable requirement. Number 5, suggestion by Plan Commission committee member, removing the yellow and retaining only red accents for consistency. Rather than concentrating on the color, I would suggest adding the 3rd building material, quite frankly. So I think, you know, all of the other things on here are pretty, like, from our ordinance standpoint, reduction of setbacks, all of that stuff. Our design criteria is very low-hanging fruit. I am surprised that that's the direction that you guys went to ask for a plan development, and I'm going to leave it at that, because it just seems like for a plan development, you know, we're giving flexibilities because of the uniqueness of the site, but I'm not really understanding why the exemptions have to be made for pretty minimal landscaping or, like, you know, facade requirements. And that's what I don't understand. And I mean, quite frankly, I'm a little frustrated because all the other stuff, I'm like, yeah, reducing front yard setbacks and having these compromises makes sense to me. But I mean, we purposely didn't put in really hard facades to meet. So.
Yeah, if I could address probably each one of those points. First of all, the 25 foot requirement, it's one of the options. It's not a full requirement. And we were trying to get away from that for a couple of reasons. One, you can start to get locked into, you know, a derogatory term we call the Madison Special, you know, which is you have these areas that are 25 feet in the projection, and then you have a recess and a projection, and you have the same buildings that are getting built over and over and over and over. We saw this as a very unique opportunity for Stoughton because of the Norwegian Scandinavian influences and the industrial nature of this, that we could do something more interesting in this building form that you're not seeing anywhere else in Madison, in Stoughton, anywhere in this area. The facades, you know, are proportional because it's a pretty long facade, so we divided it up pretty equally in terms of how it feels from a proportional standpoint of the light wood to the dark woods. In addition to that, the Norwegian Scandinavian design is very simple with punched openings. Now, our punched openings do have very unique window styles. You're not seeing these window styles pretty much anywhere else. I've never seen them in Madison currently, in the Madison area, I should say. The materials we're using, we have, the wood is going to be like this aluminum metal with a printed material, which is one sort of fabric. The extended pieces right there is going to be another metal, but like a black metal on it. The red part will be like a cement board or maybe even an ephes if that is sufficient for what we're trying to do, which is another material type. Here's some other wood colors that we're going to be using. The board and batten is another texture itself. Even though it is cement board, it's a cement board. It's going to be this smooth, but it's going to be this dark color with a raised trim every 4 feet or so. So that's a whole different texture. So we think we have 3 textures or more on this building right now, currently. So maybe the images aren't quite expressing what we're trying to do here, but that's what we think. In addition to that, we do have the recesses at each material change, and also we have balconies that are overhung, which serve multiple purposes, one of which it helps break up that facade and make it feel like it's pushed out. And I know our balconies aren't every 25 feet, but when it comes to doing apartment buildings, units rule what the form of the building becomes. And so the units behind there kind of dictate like how these balconies will be set in there. And we feel like proportionally, historically, contextually that this building fits really, really nice in this area with the design criteria that we have set forth. We also have a canopy over our entryway. I know that was one of the criteria that was in there, which I didn't quite fully understand. So that's why we want to go this route. We feel that this is very, very appropriate for what we're trying to do. So.
All right, any other feedback while we pass these around?
Oh, are they? Okay.
Okay, so I'm not hearing any other feedback. Did we get through it all?
Well, what direction do you guys want me to go here? We didn't even have minimum criteria on our ordinance. We put it in. It's easy to meet. I mean, I don't know why. I feel like it was just ignored, to be honest with you. I hate that we were put in this position, to be 1,000% honest with you.
Well, it sounds like we were able to at least express some of our concerns. I think you guys tried to provide some rationale on some of them, and also maybe some solutions for others.
Yeah, and we definitely hear the concern. I think we are trying to meet you guys in the middle, and regarding the design aspects of this building, you know, it says pick X, Y, and Z, and I do think we are successfully meeting those. So that's what I have to say to that.
Yeah, I think one thing we really share is that I know your team, and especially, you know, when I talk to Joe, you know, we all kind of feel that this is kind of a rare opportunity for our community and even for you guys to have a project like this. So I think that's why there's so much deliberation, is because we really want to work together to do the best we can to get it right for you and us, and most importantly, the community.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to lose sight of that when
Yep.
we're having these conversations. We're trying to be honest and constructive, but
Yep.
sometimes it might feel like we're being brutally honest.
No, I think, and I will speak for Joe. Don't tell him. We want the same for the community. You know, we are right next door, and you know, we want to do right by everyone in this room, but also everybody outside of this room as well. So.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the fact that you're here tonight and you have, you know, a big part of your team is really important, because this is really the first chance that this group, which is actually 4 council members, 3 here and 1 online, so that's a third of the council, has a chance to give you guys some feedback, and I think that you took it pretty well. I'm sure at times it wasn't the most fun, but it's not fun for us to deliver concerns. But like I said, we're trying to make this better, right? So we appreciate you doing that. And then I think, you know, kind of we should talk about next steps. You guys have any thoughts about, I mean, I talked about maybe having an internal meeting. You might not think that's a good idea. You might want them to just come back here, or, you know, they're going to more than likely be at the RDA next month as well. We have to get to a point where we can get to a developers agreement. The MOU, I think, ends sometime in July. So we're trying to keep things moving. So if you have any thoughts process-wise of what you'd like to see, I would really think that would be helpful.
Can I?
I think,
do
yeah,
you
go
mind?
ahead, yep.
Oh, okay. So the first thing we need to do is pass the zoning for the plan development, and I need that outlined. And then the next step is the SIP approval. I do think we need to require something on the facade, especially we've got 4th Street that's very visible. I don't care which direction you guys go. Like, I mean, this is your decision, but I do want you guys to be aware of like how long that 4th Street space is. And I know that this was, we were rewriting the zoning code, this was one of them that came up and we were like, we cannot have big blocks. So I don't know if you want to say, we're approving this through the SIP approval, facade needs to be upgraded so that they have time to work, or if you want to lay out what you want. But right now, the recommendation to council that I'll give is what we've talked about in each one of those points, with it either written as the SIP approved, like maybe adjusted during the SIP approval or something along those lines for the zoning. And then it has to go to 2 readings at council. So that's where our role is in this. Does everybody understand what I'm saying and or asking, or what you want me to do?
And I feel like the tighter we can get this, the less likely we're going to have the same types of conversations at 2 council meetings. So I think vetting it out here is going to pay off in the long run. Any thoughts from you guys on the process?
Well, I think we need to look for a recommendation for council, and then I can outline those recommendations per the planner's report. I think really what I need to button down from you guys is, so like, for one, we'd approve the landscaping surface ratio of 36% with the understanding they have to meet 1, 2, or 2, 3, and 4 with the 60% grade, with the understanding number 1 can be approved during the SIP approval. Number 2 recommendation is the front yard setback can be reduced to 15 feet if they do number 1, 2, well, we can remove, I think we just need to leave number 2 in, just it's just more like, hey, a reminder, 1, 2, and 3 that can be approved during the SIP approval. Now, C is reducing the minimum 30% to 25 with the understanding that the 5% has to be made up in porches, what was written on there. That would be part of the new plan development and doesn't necessarily need to be approved during the SIP approval. That can be part of this. D is they're requesting not to meet the multifamily residential facade. I would like something, a direction, even if it's like, this is the direction to approve during the SIP approval, because I want to make sure that this is clarified. I want to make sure everything is really well written out. That's how I like to operate, so they don't spend a lot of money on something that you guys are not happy with, and I'm not put in a position where I'm presenting something thinking it's okay and it's not. So that's why that's where we're at.
Any thoughts about that?
What sort of things can we do with, so it's mostly the 4th Street facade is what? Is that what you're talking about, Chris?
Yeah, I think, so between the landscaping, but I do think we need that one element pulled, at least on one side of, like, visible from the street on Emory Building. Even if it's, kind of not functional to the design that we would normally see in other spaces, I think that's a good compromise, because that's this pinnacle that we're seeing, and a lot of the really cool design work is actually on the inside of the building, not on the out, like it's on the inside L of the building, not on the outside visible to the public. So I think that is a good compromise. Tom, I know I'm leaning on you. You're my facade dude. What would you like to see? Putting you on the spot, but we can write something like that element needs to be pulled in with the understanding that we can approve it during the SIP approval or something along those lines.
Yes, that's
Okay.
That's acceptable.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you guys all understand then what it is we're laying out?
So what I'll do is tomorrow when I get into work, I will type up the resolution and I will get it sent to everyone in this room, like with the exception of walking quorum, if you know what I mean, so that everyone is aware of what will be going to the council. It will not be at tomorrow night's council meeting. it'll be at the following one, which is, do you know what date, does anybody have that date? For the first reading of the zoning,
Be the 21st.
the 21st. So this will be, the first reading will be at the 21st. Can't believe it's already June. And then it'll be at the first reading in July for the council. And that'll establish the zoning, but I'll make sure I get that done and then sent out to everyone. I'll blind carbon copy, so if anyone misunderstood, we can get it taken care of now before it goes to council. So we're not making it weird. So
All right, so how do we make a motion to that effect?
I'd ask for a motion to approve with the outline planning suggestions as discussed with SIP versus zoning changes, with the exception of, I believe it's number 5, which is to pull that design throughout the building, which can be determined during the SIP approval. Do you guys feel comfortable with that?
Yes,
Okay, so
All right, who wants to make the motion?
I will.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thank you all for being here. We'll be in touch, right? Okay,
So,
and then we do have do we have one more agenda item?
yeah, I wanted to touch base with you guys on some stuff. So I will be bringing the Arts Zoning District back with a couple changes. I'm probably going to notice it even if we table it the next meeting, because we only have one thing at the next meeting, and it's an extraterritorial, so I'm going to do some
Shouldn't have
house
said that.
cleaning.
Shouldn't have said that.
No, because the deadline's passed. So if you guys want to see stuff, this is the meeting, like, tell me, and I will get the research done and get it to the next meeting. Other side note, so during one of our meetings, Tim might throw something at me for saying something. During one of our meetings, there was a developer here listening to the Pocket Neighborhood, and they were like, that is cool, I want to do that. So we actually have somebody interested, which is awesome. Yeah, it really is cool, because it hasn't even passed yet, because that's going to be at council tomorrow, and we actually have some people interested, so that's really neat.
I'm not comfortable with the city being ahead of the curve.
I don't like it either.
Like this?
I don't like it either. So this is the other thing I kind of wanted to just touch base with you guys. Our multifamily residential, if you want to see additional things required on it, if you want to see things better spelled out, please come talk to me. Zoning ordinances should be living, working, breathing, and if we see flaws or you guys want other things included, you need to let me know. So,
Yeah, and I would just add that the zoning codes and plan development is a struggle countywide. We're not the only ones that are grappling with this, and I know it's painful to go through it.
Well, I'm just glad that we were a little proactive. Chris got us pushed in the right direction by changing our zoning when we did it before. I mean, we still had 2 requests for it.
yeah.
But I mean, at least not with what we put, the work that was foundation we put beforehand, we were able to say, defend things and require things and on a footing where it was reasonable and not arbitrary and capricious.
Yeah, we could have been here another hour tonight talking about this stuff that they actually
Yeah,
saw in the zoning code and adhered to.
yeah.
So I think
So
you're right.
I thank you, Chris, for putting us in the right footing.
Thank you guys for being very, I really appreciate all of your time. I sincerely do. I appreciate that you guys give me direction. Seriously, thank you.
All right, I would entertain a
appreciate it.
motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Schumacher and Majewski, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, we're adjourned.
Chris, as we get, or with the